Hello, hello. Welcome, one and all, to Humpday Q&A.
Hello, hello.
Oh, it's been a week. Oh, you got your video set. Sorry, last second. That's good. Last second.
Yeah, it's not right. It's just adjusted and adapted.
Yeah.
There's something going on with StreamYard for me that the white coming off my monitor makes me look like I'm on fire. So
Wait,
I had to make some adjustments. It's still not right, but it will work.
Right, let's crack on with the show. So let's do our introductions, and then we'll get going and get your questions answered, and I don't know, go from there. Scott.
Alrighty, be nice, be respectful, be constructive. Come on, you know the way this works. Don't post anything that's adult, rude, offensive, or otherwise against common sense. Don't advertise or promote yourself over and over again. We all know you need a job. Don't spam your same question repeatedly. Every time you post that question, it goes to the bottom of the list, even if you've put it up before. We have had some people who just can't seem to understand that concept, and then they complain, why didn't you answer my question? Well, it's because you keep putting it at the bottom of the list. Anyway, harassment of any kind is, of course, not tolerated. Bigotry, incels, racism, etc., etc. Anything like that happens, you'll be blocked from here, and we will pass your name around to everywhere we know in the Flutter community. So don't be surprised if your other logins suddenly won't work. Last but not least, have fun.
Have a good time, indeed. Let's do some introductions. I'll get there eventually. Yeah, my name's Simon Lightfoot, Flutter Community Leader, CTO at Dev Angels London, and you can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Scott.
My name is Scott Stahl. I am also Flutter Community Leader, one of many, and organizer GDG Cleveland. And you can find me writing some code under the name Good Dog Apps or under Simon's Stairs in the basement.
Oh dear, that joke is just terrible. It makes me sound like a like a slave driver. Thanks. Randall, please introduce.
Yeah, that was okay. Hi.
Put the whip in the closet. He can't find it.
I'm Randall Schwartz. I'm the Dart and Flutter Google developer expert, have been for just over 5 years, and I've been helping people out online. I see a lot of you that come to this chat on all those other places that I help people out on. And for this particular show, I am the question magician, which means I am watching the incoming community chat, the YouTube chat, particularly for questions. And if I see them, I will flag them. Please put Q: in front of them. That way I know it's for us and not just you all chatting amongst yourselves, which you do very well frequently. They do. They talk to each other. They talk to each other about us. I know you never see that, but yeah, they do chat.
And we have a Danielle with us. Danielle, welcome.
I'm back. Hey. Sorry, I've missed the last couple of weeks. My my little bird's been in the hospital, and he's home now, but he's not quite himself. So I'm hoping he keeps getting better. But anyway, I'm able to be here today. So glad to be here.
Do you want to do a brief introduction?
I'm sorry. Of course, I am Danielle Cox. I lead a team of Flutter developers at a company called Dartly, and I also am one of the organizers for the Flutteristas, which I'm very proud of. And those are pretty much my claims to fame.
We've I was thinking about, like, just that whole sort of how we started up the community stuff, and it on one hand it seems so long ago, on the other hand it does seem like yesterday. It's very surreal. Like it's been, when was it? When was it, Scott? 20. Well, it would have been what, 28? No, 2017. Did we start?
Yeah.
No, 28. No,
September 2017.
Yeah, but we set up the community, the whole community sort of media and the YouTube,
Well, it came about slowly, piece by piece. I think.
Yeah, I think it was over the following year. It was between. I think we started in February because it was before beta, which was in March of 2018, and it went through to probably. I think we set the. I know we set the media in the middle of the year. I remember that.
Okay, yeah, that's when Nash did that. We I think we started.
Jay was helping us out with the GitHub.
2018 started.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know when Jay did but basically, yeah, there are different people who have different components: the Flutteristas, the Medium, the GitHub, this show, and also a lot of other things on the other side of the world. I mean, let's not forget about like Pooja, Pawan.
Oh yeah.
All the work they've done.
PK's videos and I don't know.
No, CodePer now. CODEPUR.
He's always going to be PK to me. What was the and obviously Fluttery with our good friend Matt Carroll.
Super declarative now.
Super declarative indeed. Wow. Anyway, right, moving on. So
it's apparently nostalgia day here.
Yeah, it is. You just mentioned the community day, just reminded me how long ago that was.
Yeah.
And I'm such a newbie because I joined at the beginning of 2019.
Yeah, that's relatively new these days. Yes,
I know. Compared to this room, it is.
I think Dart has had enhanced enums longer than you've been participating.
No. However, it hasn't.
Nor has it had code as a UI.
Strict types was 2019, wasn't it? Was that 2018?
Which was it?
When Dart 2 came out with null safety and strict type. No, null safety came out. We had Dart 2 came out.
Safety was until at least 2019.
That was before me.
Maybe even
2019.
Yeah, that was before me. We had that when I got here.
Yeah.
I mean, I
remember when there was weak typing.
Let's watch us all remember our own version of
we're all going to be like these people with walking sticks and hearing aids. Do you remember those days when we?
Wait, where's my key? Where's my walker? I got my walker right here.
I've got about 2 weeks worth of more dust on my dash than Simon has on his.
Right. Anyway, right. We do want to mention just a brief mention here on the Global Gamers Challenge, which is currently on. I believe there's still time to enter. So if you haven't already, check out flutter.dev/global-gamers. And there's prizes to be won. Up to $100,000 worth of total prizes to be won. So, enter or you won't be about to win it. So, why not? So we have actually been doing some game dev coding. We will continue that later. I know that there was a request on how to embed custom web objects in Flutter Web and how that works. So maybe we also do a demo of that later as well. I mean, I think we've already started getting questions in the queue, haven't we?
We have
Yeah.
just one personal note before we move forward. It's been 6 weeks since my surgery. I'm doing great. And I'm walking around. I'm in no pain at all. Anytime I'm sleeping or sitting or standing or even walking, just a little sore to move the muscles that are underutilized right at the moment. But I'm doing great. And I should be getting home probably in another 3 or 4 weeks, which should be great. Back to my secret underground lair.
The Bat Cave.
My Bat
One
Cave.
other quick thing too. I'm
Fortress
going to
of
need to
Solitude.
go probably in 30 to 45 minutes because we have a puppy who has bleeding paws.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So stuff. I mean, I literally have to go wash deep up in her paws with antiseptic.
Oh,
Yeah.
she's not going to like that.
Yeah, the salt's doing a number on her. All right.
Right. Can we jump into the first questions and just get going?
Hang on. Karaoke is Japanese for tone deaf and English for cruel and unusual torture. So I saw some notes about karaoke in
Oh
the
dear.
chat.
Come on.
All right. Let's move it on. Can't you just pass your repository instances from the top level widget to each widget in the tree and live without change notifiers and only use set state? Yes, you can. The talk about it was called the Mahogany Staircase. If you look that one up, it's ancient history.
It's a bit old now, but the principles and the techniques still. In fact, if you check out the WoW shopping example, we do that as part of the examples of state management. So we did. There was a course that we did last. I say we. It was GDG London and Flutter London did together on state management, and the output of that was this WoW shopping example application. If you check it out, there's branches for Riverpod, for Provider, for what are the other branches? I can't remember now. Block, and you can sort of like check out what it might be to do different things in different mechanisms. But the main repo just does plain Flutter, so that uses a variety of mechanisms. So you can see what there's inherited model, inherited widget, there's change notifier, there's value notifier, value listable builder. They're all in there, so you can try and check them out there.
Well, and also, though, I mean, the whole reason people are putting effort into state management is because you don't really want to keep passing things down the tree.
So, yeah, but I mean, if you look at this, you say pass down the tree without, you can just put provider. That's what provider does, David. So you put provider at the top, and essentially means that anything below it in the tree can access that variable, right? Can access that content that you put in your provider. It does not have to be a change notify provider. It can just be a provider, right?
Right, but that's in the context.
Right. But here's the thing, right, David? What you kind of want to do is have it so that that widget is listening to a field or let's say you had total notifications that the user's got in a top corner somewhere, maybe on the app. Now that number, whenever you get a notification coming into your app, you change your app, stay at the top level, and somehow you need to tell that widget that the number's changed. So you go re-render with the new number. So the way that works normally is that widget registers with something, i.e. a notifier, right? So that when that value changes, it updates. Now what you can do, you have your top level state class if you want to, with a value notifier in it for total notifications, right? And then in your widget tree, you can use a value listable builder, or you can just use your own custom widget with set state. And whenever it gets, the did update widget, when it gets called, inside that, did dependencies change? It did change dependencies. I'll get it right in a second. You can just have it rereads the provider and goes, did my value notifier change? Yes, then rebuild. But yeah, there's a ton of different ways of doing that, and that's what state management is all about. I think the problem here is managing your app state. That's what is what the term state management covers. There's a whole course of materials. I'll put a link actually in the chat here. It's worth reading. There's a whole it's Is Christian watching? Actually, I think he had a categories.
Christian's always watching, isn't he?
Well, he should be. Well, I say should he?
During the show. During the show.
He actually had a link to, I think, state management, like all the questions we've answered on state management previously. He's got like a repo with it. Anyway, you try to find the link. Yeah, here you go. Here's an introduction. I'll put this in the chat for everyone. This is Introduction to State Management from the official, and then there's Thinking Declaratively, Ephemeral versus App State, an example, and some other things in there that you can go read up. Yeah, I think I seem to. Here you go. And I want to see if this actually loads here. Hang on. There you go. So if anyone's interested, this Christian's been updating this on a weekly basis by the looks of it. If you go to this link, Humpday Q&A questions database, for want of a better word. If you click on state management, I think I'm going to bring this up on stream actually.
This is also known as Christian's life work.
Yeah, and it is really good. So see if I can get this up on the stream nicely. Well, hang on. Yeah, I'll cover it up. There you go. So yeah, Humpday Q&A questions, and if you click on state management, there's links to all the state management questions we've ever had, and all the different sessions. Well, not ever had, but all the different links, or different videos and time codes. So if you want to go find out about state management, there's a huge swath of chats and things you can watch. The same goes. There's a whole section there in Riverpod and various other things as well.
Yeah. Now one thing I might want to add to that just slightly though, is that one of the problems with if you pass it down every level like that, you are completely violating any kind of object-oriented stuff that's there, because the idea would be that only the places that need it should have access to that code. It shouldn't be all the way down at that point.
Do you mean passing it down as in like passing it as a parameter? You mean?
Yeah.
Would you mean passing
exactly.
it down as in provide?
Yeah, that's what I think he's talking about here. Yeah.
No, I think it's passing as a parameter.
Yeah, I think it's passing parameters coming down.
Well, that's why I was thinking it said top level widget specifically.
Yeah. So I think he's from the top level widget to each widget in the tree, and so I think it's about passing it all the way down.
I mean, you can
pass it to each widget
down,
but
it's a whole sleeve of boilerplate.
Yeah.
That also means that, again, sorry, I'm talking over what you were just saying there, Danielle, but it was as you're saying, every widget in that tree does not need to know about that. Therefore, you're breaking this sort of the responsibility there. And if you do want to change that, the name of it, suddenly you have to change it everywhere in every widget of your entire application, which is just nuts.
And in an app of any real size, oh my God, how many parameters are you passing?
Exactly. Like it just, I mean, you could just have like at some point you go, well, I could just have an app state class which has everything that I want, and then just pass that down to everyone. But then again, the point here is you just like disregard everything, but still the whole point, it doesn't make sense to pass. As soon as you start passing the parameters more than sort of 2 levels deep on widgets, you're like, well, something's wrong here. Like,
Randall, what would be wrong with renaming my app to app and making it stateful? Because you're saying no app state.
No, we're not saying that. No. We're saying that
I'm saying that you don't want a monolith, because every time the monolith updates, everything rebuilds. So that's why I'm saying that.
Right.
Now,
being a smart ass.
Sorry.
Another way that I've done it in the past to kind of deal with this is, and this actually will come up, it looks like maybe on the next question to a certain extent, but if you have an on-generate route where you're building your widget that happens based upon what route you're in, that might be a reasonable place to start passing in some state if you wanted to, and you didn't want to have it be global everywhere, stuff like that. And so that's another way I've done it. Actually, I saw that being done with Fluttery, we just mentioned earlier. Super declarative, Matt.
Yep.
Matt. So yeah, so that's another way to do it without using a package or anything, but keeping it somewhat more isolated. Is to kind of create your business rule model, whatever kind of stuff you want to pass into the into the actual widget and do it at the point when you're building the route. And that way it doesn't have to go through all the layers above it because you're building it. So.
Alrighty.
Right. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
We missed you.
I think we've got that one. So rolling right into this one, as Danielle said, when to use material apps routes or material apps on generated route, or neither of the above, maybe just navigator push, material route with a builder. And then what's not here is when to use Go Router.
Yeah, Go Router. Yeah.
I'm going to say that I've done 3 talks on navigators, on various things around navigation, which answer all these questions. So I do probably need to. I tell you what I've been meaning to do is make a web page that has like, here's all my content, right, that people go see.
Christian's already running around to find those talks and put links in them.
Yeah.
But I actually have all of my presentation videos. I made sure I capture them all. So upload them all. Something. I've got permissions. Anyway, right. Material app routes. So what he's talking about here is specifically the routes parameter, which is a routes table, which is route name to route builder or widget builder. On generate route, which is more about building the actual dynamic routes, and then rather than using push with a material page route builder, for example. I'm going to caveat this and just say there's no difference. That's essentially what it is. So when you do push with a name, all it's doing is going up to that top level and looking it up, and then calling material page route, the builder, with that as the parameters of the name and the build and the widget builder. That's it. It's no different. It's just how you want to organize your app. The problem with doing it with just the named pushes is that you have to serialize any parameters, right? So what you're saying is I'm pushing this path, and this path has to contain any of the parameters I want for my following widgets and screens to use. I find that extremely limiting, and I prefer to do push with an actual route itself. However, I don't do navigate.push material page route widget builder, blah, blah, blah. That would be nuts. What I do is on the top level widget for the screen that I'm doing, I'll put a static generator function, right? Which will just be like a function called route that returns a route. And inside there, it can build like a material page route or use page route builder. And that gives us the single responsibility about that page to the page itself, rather than everywhere where you want to navigate to that page being having to generate the route, right? So just by creating a function and using that function across your app, you can achieve a similar goal. I can show that in a minute if you're interested again. But yeah, I don't think there's any, like you say, when to use it. I think the answer to this is, even if you push a material page route, you can give it a name, a URL. The difference, I think, sorry, just to carry on with one point, and then I'll give it up to the floor. The key difference is their name, right? So when you use even if you push with a material page route, you can give it a name. If you enter your app with an initial route, that's the difference. So if you enter with an initial route, you're saying, I want to load this named route. So it's a bit like being deep linked into your app from some external source. Or let's say if you launch your app in web mode, which I'll let Danielle talk about a bit more, you get like the path from the browser, right? The URL. And it's like, well, what do I do with this? And then you need to look up and decide what route to load or what routes to load in a stack. And that's up to you. But that's separate to all of this. Now, the nice thing is you've got packages like Route Master, Go Router. There's a ton of them, and they take away all that complexity for you. So you don't even have to worry about this. Use material app dot router, I think it is, route builder. I can't remember what the name is. It's a generator that takes the router parameters for Navigator 2, and then that will then build out from there. So you don't have to. The whole idea is the whole navigation bit is flexible now. You can do whatever you want, and there's a lot of packages out there that also take that complexity and make it simple for you to use in different ways.
That's all of Flutter. You can do whatever you want.
I mean, I'm saying I'll try.
Problem.
Well, this is it. I was literally having this conversation with some first-time Flutter developers Monday, a couple of days ago, and I explained to them the power. They're coming from other platforms. They already have a good depth of knowledge, but the power of Flutter is that it does not limit you into you must do things this specific way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can do absolutely anything you want. Right? You can just paint any pixel, any color, do whatever you want. That's great because from a developer standpoint, half the problem with frameworks and libraries is getting sort of worked into a box, and then you have to program around that box to actually get what you're trying to do done, right? And as soon as you're working against the framework is not working for you; it's working against you, right? As a developer for a framework or library, and that's pretty much the de facto standard for a lot of big operating systems. You do it their way or the highway, right? So when it comes to Flutter, its power is that it lets you do any of this stuff. However, that is also the negative in terms of from a beginner standpoint, it's like, well, how do I do any of this stuff? Because it hasn't told me I want it done this way, right? And then you get what we also get is a wide range set of opinions and ways of doing things and recommendations. Some good, some bad, but the point here is it gives you, as long as a piece of string, exactly. Not just enough to hang
Flutter
yourself.
gives you all the rope you could ever want, and you can wrap it around your neck 100 times.
But anyway,
there's so much rope.
Anyway, sorry, I went on about a completely different topic now. What were we talking about?
We're talking about.
I think we were talking about the next question.
How to go about getting to a new route, I guess, really is pushing one. Yeah. And I want to say that we've got two basic app styles that we're doing at Ardley. And one of them is very much a traditional app that, would not feel out of place pretty much anywhere. And for that, we use GoRouter, and it has a stack and you push things on and you come back. The other one, though, is very kind of state dependent, and you may click something, but I may have to send you somewhere else and stuff like that. And for that, we use onGenerateRoute so that we can figure out, we can create a builder that's actually appropriate for where you really are with the app, not necessarily where it thought it wanted to go. And that is a single page app. So, I mean, it's always a push and pop, basically. It's not a case of building up a stack and stuff like that. And so my point there is kind of that I do think it matters your use case. And I think GoRouter is really good. So I would probably recommend, if you don't want to learn the details of it, I would look at something like GoRouter. And if you want to learn the details of it, great, get in there. It's a lot of fun to figure out how these things work.
And I go the other way. I'm working with an app right now that it's got a bunch of pages, but they're all very simple. They're all pulling their information from provider, actually from Riverpod. And there's no need for me to do complex navigation. So I'm still using Navigator 1. Just material page route. I don't need anything more than that. If I need more than that, I'll go get more than that.
And to be clear on this, for anybody that's newer here, it's Navigator 1 and Navigator 2, which is kind of, everybody agrees is a horrible name for it because it's not like one is the progression of the other. It's two different ways of doing it.
Yes.
Well, interesting.
Navigator 1 is simpler.
Interesting enough, technically speaking, Navigator 2 contains everything that's in Navigator 1. So, if you want to know, I did do a talk on this. I can find it and link it. But Navigator 2 is broken into two APIs: Router API and Pages API. The Router API does all the routing and all the names and all that kind of fun. So that's where GoRouter comes in. The Pages API is how you present a list of pages on the screen, a stack of pages, and that is Navigator 1. In fact, we've seen Navigator 2, but it's actually built as part of the Navigator 1 widget, the Navigator widget. So you can actually just build your own custom Navigator widget with a pages list and do whatever you want in terms of navigation. If you want to push pop, you just change the ones you're displaying. Literally, it's declarative. So it's what everyone wants, and then no one uses it. Anyway.
Well, and I'm going to skip some questions here just because these go right together. It just continues the same conversation. For complex and larger projects, do you select state management depending on project or stick to the one you like? And this is an age-old question, if I may. Which state management can you hit your deadline with and still does well for the app? Okay, write good code, use good coding practices, and at the same time, a lot of times it's just what you're familiar with. Because if you're taking time to try to learn something while working on an app, that deadline can come real quick. Anybody else?
I'm going to add exactly that. The thing is, Alex, choosing a state management type is just preference. At the end of the day, it's completely preference. It's what you're comfortable with, because the benefits and downsides. I'll be honest with you, the benefits and downsides to most state management. Sorry, there's like the amount of optimizations you get over one over the other is this different. Like, it's the tiniest of differences you're going to see between them, for the most part. I won't go into specific details there, but for all the ones that you want to choose for however you want to do it, you're not going to get into like a particular problem. But as long as you're consistent with your state management and the problem here is with a larger complex project, you're gonna need different solutions for different problems. And I suspect you're going to run into like finding that your state management solution, whichever one you pick, doesn't do what you need to do in a certain situation. And you're going to have to work around it. However, I'm sure Randall wants to talk about Riverpod.
Well, Simon, I was just going to congratulate you on saying such a weaselly worded statement to try not to trigger me to immediately jump in. But Riverpod does this better. At the end of the day, I agree with you. It's about having observable, locatable data. And whatever system you use to be able to find the data you're looking for and notice when it changes, that's essential. And all state management does that at one level or another, with certain optimizations for certain categorizations, certain ways of aggregating that data or splitting that data into smaller parts. I happen to think that Riverpod does that better than anybody else does at this point. I'm waiting for the next best thing to come along. Hint, it won't involve streams at the core. Please stop doing those. So that's my take on that.
One other quick thing, real quick, and maybe it's better to look at it this way. People, I believe, would do very well to stop worrying about the performance of state management. In the app. Hang on. Don't worry. Now, the performance of state, as long as you're using one of the normal systems, I'm talking about Block or Provider or Riverpod, etc. Don't worry about the performance of that on the device. Worry about your performance with it. So if you perform better working with Riverpod, don't try to force yourself into Block. Or don't try to force yourself into inherited widget. What are you going to perform best with? As long as it's, Block, Riverpod, even perhaps there could be arguments for Get It.
You can use all the built-in stuff as well, like for
vanilla.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly just pick one. I think we shy away from. I think the ones that we've had, the only one that we've had, apart from the obvious one, we're not going to talk about. That we don't say the name. They don't get.
Would we get sued if we put a picture of Voldemort up?
But what was the one that we've actually heard from other people that run big projects that have had problems with? It was
there's Redux with a really big project.
So Redux, Redux by its nature of rebuilding its entire state tree as immutable for each state change. Ends up becoming.
I talked to Brian Egan. He said, "Don't use it."
Yeah, it's not just Brian. There's a bunch of people that we know that end up using Redux a few projects, and it becomes quite heavyweight for any state change because it has to rebuild the entire tree. Now you can do some other things like do some trickery in there and stuff to try and get around it. But at the end of the day, is the pattern itself works in smaller units, not in a larger unit where you've got a lot more to it. So yeah,
one thing about that, what Brian was talking to me about, is the biggest thing besides Time Machine is that there's one-way flow of data. But don't we still get one-way flow
Yes.
of data automatically if we stick to the reactive paradigm?
Exactly. I mean, so the fact here is unidirectional data flow is the term used, and it basically just means this is always. I mean, again, Flutter does not limit you to immutable models. You can do whatever you want. However, from years of practice with building apps, I can tell you right now, having immutable models and having that unidirectional data flow is key to completely cutting out like 50-60% of all bugs, right? Because you're never going to be changing that state or have that state change and not have the UI represent that state. That is the key to how you build a strong Flutter app. If you have state that you're mutating all the time and you don't control and don't have good controls over the mutating state to rebuild the UI, your UI will represent a state that is not what your app believes it's in. And then you get this disparagement between these two. And that is fundamentally the essence of all huge numbers of bugs, basically, between those two.
I'd even argue that set state puts you a bit at odds because you have to manually insert set state when you update your state in a way that the view should reflect it. You have to remember to add that extra step to all those. That's why we put the mutator inside the body of set state, even though it's not directly related to it. I think remind you that this is related because of that.
And a real quick aside, and going back,
there could be another pattern that. So just a key point on that you said about set state. Yeah, but I think set state is never say it's the fundamental thing. So even any of the other state management stuff eventually essentially do set state. They eventually say you need to rebuild the widget, right? I think it's just about like giving that sort of base access to anyone, and then the state management solutions on top can do it differently. There's a notion of I want to rebuild my widget because the state has changed, and that can come in two flows. It's coming from a mechanism of notification, and then the widget itself is using set state to say rebuild myself, right? Rebuild this widget that I'm in, versus the opposite way around, which is almost like getting notified to go rebuild yourself, right? There are very subtle differences between those two approaches. One is that it handles the rebuilding itself, and one is that it's been rebuilt from outside of the widget. And the state management solutions come in both those two varieties, and most have both options. Yeah.
I was trying to jam something in before you got that complicated on it, because we've got beginners here. And if you're having any trouble wrapping your head around set state, the naming is not good. Okay. Picture it as rebuild after.
Yeah.
And if it says rebuild after, and then you put all this stuff in it, what it's going to do is run all that code and then rebuild. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit easier way to wrap your head around it if you're just starting.
It would be nice if we had another sort of base. I think we're missing some more base elements and made base widgets in the framework. I think they need to be expanded in the framework, if I'm honest, to encompass some of these more sort of different patterns of behavior when it comes to that sort of level. Yeah.
All right. We've still got. Oh my God. Okay, questions are done. Done.
I was about to point that out.
18 questions, and we average about 6 minutes each.
There's 2 or 3 multi-parts, so it's a little less than 18 actual questions. But yeah, I was just going to say at the top of the hour, we should probably stop. Let's stop at the top of the hour, and then there'll be a full hour of questions after that.
The one thing that, the one thing I might want to add to this that is not really about which state management type, but if it's a complex and larger project, it probably has a team. Mm-hmm. And so, the same things we said about whichever one you like, even if that's, if like you've got a 10-person team and 9 of them are all super familiar with RiverPod and Block, it's probably better to use RiverPod than to force everybody else to learn Block, even though you may be leading the team.
I will also say conversely to that, there's no reason why you can't do training and other things to make sure that everyone, and to be honest, it doesn't matter if everyone has their own opinion about how one of these patterns should be implemented. So you should probably have training and meetings and various other things to make sure that everyone's on the same page about how we're deciding to use this state management pattern to build this very large project. So you don't get half the app built one way, half the app built a completely different way, and go, well, we're both using RiverPod, so it's fine. Right? When it comes down to the techniques and architecture are completely different. And
So if I'm going to boil it down to what I was trying to say there, though, is the fact that there sometimes are practical issues that are not technical
Yes.
issues that you should
Yes.
keep in mind.
We do
And that's very
mention this.
Frequently there are practical.
We've also mentioned in the past. So I will just brief this topic before we move on, and that is state management is always mixed up with architecture, and that is like how one goes around building the software and how it communicates within itself, which is not strictly state management. State management is more about rebuilding your UI relating to your state changes, your app state changes.
And that's
that's
a conversation I had with Chris Sells.
How your all your objects in your app communicate with each other and how it changes and updates your app state is architecture, not state management.
And it gets, if you're brand new, I had a conversation with somebody at Google one time and I had a question. Basically, state management in my head was how you manage the state of the variables within your app. Okay, but they call that business logic, right? So what we call state management is actually state propagation or change propagation. When you change the state, it has to notify other parts of the app, and they call that state management. So I asked Chris, I said, why don't they call the business logic state management and the other state propagation? And he said, I have no idea, but they've been calling it that way since Dart. So that's just what we call it.
It's interesting because a lot of, this happens a lot with software and frameworks. Like everyone has their language, right? The way that they call things, what their naming conventions are, and how they build things. And I think it's part and parcel of learning a framework is learning those patterns and understanding those patterns. And when you understand those patterns, you can see how it could be applied to any number of things inside the framework, and that helps you understand the framework itself, which is the same regards to Flutter as any other framework.
Okay. And last thing before moving on, Robert, you've lost your invite.
No, he's got his invite back. That's it. Okay. Provider all the way. There you go. I'm waiting for rolling eyes from Randall here. All right, what's the next question?
Here we roll right into another related question. Okay, because as Simon said, a lot of times people cross up state management with architecture. So here we go again.
I would just want to briefly mention we do not work for Google. We're community members. This is all community.
We do not. There's no one here who works for Google.
I'm a Google expert, but I'm not working for Google.
They're very nice people on the team. They send us shirts and every once in a while acknowledge that we exist. So, all right.
Every now and again.
Yeah.
Randall, where's your dash? There he is.
Here we go. And mine are perched up there.
Perched,
all right.
Literally. Great.
Do you recommend MVVM or MVC or MVP or MOUSE pattern in Flutter? What are the pros and cons? Sorry, MOUSE is Mickey Mouse. What are the pros and cons?
I don't even remember what MVVM. I know it's model. Is it model view
model?
It's sort of like MVC, very similar.
It's like MVP.
Yeah, the idea is I'm separating out my data from how I get my data, from how I display my data. You know what I do with it.
What you would do.
And that's what you should be doing no matter what. So
I mean, if I may, a real quick one, and I'll just let you all go. Model is your class, your model, like your car. Okay. View is the UI you're writing. That's your widgets. And that's your presentation. And so I guess that's what, and then your controller, like in an MVC, is going to be your business logic.
Yeah.
So you've got your thing, like your car, you've got your business logic that makes things changed, and then you got to show it. Whatever you call that doesn't matter. It's a reactive paradigm of those things, and it circles in one direction only.
So, strictly speaking, a lot of these MVC and they don't use unidirectional data flow. Not all of them, right?
Yeah, not at all.
So going and saying I want to take this pattern and using it here never really works. In fact, the only real pattern that you can really get with the declarative approach of UI is MVI, if I remember rightly. Out of all those kind of options, but strictly speaking, there's no one pattern that successfully meets all requirements anyway, right? The nature of having, most apps would have multiple models. Most apps will have a model which they talk with an API with, which is whatever the API that has requirements on what the parameters are for the API. So you might need to send like the ID of a user, not the entire user model, for example, right? However, the app wants the entire user model, so it may request that user model and store that local user model along with whatever data, right? So there's a difference in terms of what the app requirement is on its domain versus what the API requires. Also, on top of that is what the view requires, and that's where view models come in, which are very handy, in fact. So this can be a good example of this is, I think I keep going back to this one, but I'll go back to it again. Let's say you have blog posts, like a list of posts in a list. Each one can be made by a different user. You may go make an API call that gets the list of posts with each user's ID, not with the full user's profile. You then go back to the server and go, okay, I don't have the information for this one, but you may have already cached the information for one of the other IDs, so you don't have to call the API for that. And eventually you're building up, now you've got a set of users and you've got a set of posts, and then you need to join them together into a new model called your view model, which will contain the post and the user for each one of those posts. And that is the difference between having a model that represents your view, which combines the data together necessarily, where the API you may not have those data points gathered together. Anyway, so yeah, when it comes down to it again, the declarative nature of the UI, and it just doesn't require you to have these patterns. The whole point of having view and view model a lot of the time in these patterns, at least these ones you're talking about, are around to get around the fact that there's no declarative UI in a lot of the frameworks that use these things. For example, a lot of the web stuff is around modifying the DOM, and that's actively mutating the existing DOM. And that's the way that the browser works. There's no way about, so even Flutter when running on web eventually mutates the DOM at least in some base way to make canvases or whatever else, right? But the point here is a lot of these patterns revolve around getting around the fact that they don't work in that declarative nature, in the declarative way that Flutter does. Different paradigm entirely. Okay, all right.
But how do you do it? It's important to separate out those concerns.
Oh yeah, definitely. Separation of concerns, solid principles, separation of concerns.
So for example, even if you get your data from an API, you want to be able to test it without doing that. So you're going to be able to inject that data in as an example.
Here's an example.
You want to, sorry, not widget.
No, on that point, I give an example on the same point I said about the blog post. You have your logic that goes to the API. You have your logic that accesses and combines everything together. You have your caches. This is all business logic. This is all stuff that's testable without anything being displayed on the screen, right? Then you have your display, and you can test your display and validate that it draws correctly with golden tests and things like that against just a view model. Against, here's the data, here's my test mock data, does it display correctly? If the text is too long, does it wrap correctly? And you can make all those tests about your display separate to your actual, business logic. Anyway, yeah. George, should we carry on? We could be all day talking about architecture and state management. I don't know.
Regarding the show and not about this question in particular, please remember spamming questions means asking them again after you've already asked them before. We just had somebody get bumped down to the bottom, and they had been a lot closer to the top than that. But we have 22 questions. If you ask your question again, you're going to move down from wherever you are down to 22.
And no more questions today anyway. I've already cut it off because it's going to get too big for our next hour.
What's next?
Moving on.
Push buttons.
Okay, there are a number of questions that don't. There's really a misunderstanding about what Flutter is meant for, I think. How to use Node.js code in Flutter web apps.
No, it's a client-server relationship, right? It's not going to be anything to do with web apps.
Hang on. You can't use Node.js on web apps anyway. Yeah. You can use JavaScript code, Pradeep, right? You can use JavaScript code, and you can use them in Flutter web apps just with the JS package. There you go. Right.
The other thing you can do is you can have your server, your Node.js server, it can generate Flutter elements that it can return elements that are in Flutter. that could be used maybe.
See, but if you're doing a server with Flutter, why wouldn't you just use a Dart server?
Well, no. What we're saying is, you can if you let's say you have always Node.js code you've already had made and worked perfectly tested, and you want to use that with your Flutter web application, you're still running that Node.js stuff on a Node.js server in either in the cloud or locally, doesn't matter. But it needs to be running, but it can't be running in your browser. Your browser is a completely different environment to Node.js. So you can run JavaScript code in your browser, and you can run JavaScript code in your server, but normally we say Node.js because it's the variety of JS which requires the Node standard libraries. Anyway, the answer to that is if you want to run it in your server, you can run your server and then you can transmit back, JavaScript or JSON or whatever, and then you display that in your app, right? The result of your Node.js code, essentially.
Okay. Moving on, we got a couple more from the same person. How to stream video in Flutter offline.
Well, then you're not streaming it.
How do you stream when you're offline?
Sorry, I'm not trying to laugh at you, but the stream means you're downloading it and watching it as it happens. You're streaming it, so you can't do that offline.
Step one: set up your own internet.
A lot of your questions are showing that you don't understand the basics of what Flutter is and what it does.
That's fine. I mean, everyone has to learn. Right? It's all beginnings.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm glad you're here. We'll try to help. But
I think the next question is actually more practical for what he's looking at. It's also still pretty.
It's kind of then.
The next one, the next one I was confused by, but maybe you see something I don't. Can we write code for a watch TV app on the phone using Flutter? To me, that's like, can we write code for a to-do list app on a phone using Flutter? Any app is possible.
Can we write code for watch TV button phone app? I don't know what watch TV button phone app is in this case. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm wondering if it might be a cast.
The apps in general, which we cannot write because we can't control the pixels on an Apple Watch yet. We can control the pixels on a Google Watch, but on an Apple Watch.
Right.
Oh, should there be commas in here for a watch, TV?
I inserted those in my head. So yes.
I don't know if that's what this means. I
think this is about a TV remote.
Restate your question. That's when I'm not playing 20 questions here.
Yeah. We can argue
either about a controller for TV or
exactly. I was honestly my first thought was red button. Well, over here we have you can press a button on your remote, launches a side-by-side app along with the TV show that you're watching, and just stuff like that as well. But again, restate your question, Pradeep. Let's move on.
Yep.
All righty.
Ship it.
And we're getting close on me here.
Me too.
Part 1 of 2, so it's a two-parter. Path providers documentation suggests to use the application library path to store an SQL or SQLite database file. However, it's not available on Android, Linux, or Windows.
So it's the application data directory is actually in
that case, application supporter activation dollar. Yeah, it's application data. Yeah.
Should the SQLite be visible to the user using files apps? Because if so, then it goes into application documents. If it's only for internal use, it goes into application support. That's how I understand those two.
There is two, but I can never remember the naming because I always have naming from Android. In Android, it's called the application data directory, and you have a cache directory, and then you have a further external application directory. And the external ones are the ones that are accessible by the user. The internal ones are not.
Yeah, Path Provider tried to isolate you from some of that, but I think what you want is application support. That's the one that's backed up to backups, at least on iOS, and but it's not visible to the user as something you can edit directly from, say, loading it onto macOS and accessing the file that way.
Okay, so they actually have external storage, external cache, external. This is just nuts. Needs to be different naming. The problem here is I've seen this with a couple of different packages that have been made for things like Flutter, where it's like we're just going to expose every function from every operating system in a flat facade. So you can but the practical nature of this, it means that you can access every function from every operating system depending on which one you're on. But then it puts the onus on choosing which one to use on you, the developer, not on the library. Normally, you would want it as like the library goes, give me the directory I need for, you know, store data, and it just gives it to you, and it will choose the right type of directory for the platform. If I remember rightly, it's application documents, but I'm now confused because the names have changed.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, one thing I was just thinking is they always say that naming things is the hardest thing in coding. And something else, I think, I don't want to call it the Peter principle, but there are an awful lot of people paid an awful lot of money to come up with names that nobody else can understand.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not very good at this.
Shall we have a look and see what it says? So yeah, you got the various versions, and then this is the sort of tick box thing we're just looking at, where it's like, yeah, the application library is not supported on these platforms, but it is supported on these ones. I think this one specifically, the notion of having a library directory is actually an iOS Mac thing, right?
Right.
That's why this is it. But this itself is so that you can access this if you're on those platforms. If you need to use that directory, you can get to it. That's why this is exposed. But as I said before, practically speaking, it's not something that you would choose to use on all platforms. And I think, as it was said here, the application support or application documents are one of these two directories is the one you actually want to use. Application cache is data that is stored alongside your application that can be discarded by the operating system when it needs the space.
Yes.
Let me be very clear about that. These files that you put in the cache directory can be deleted at any time, even when your application is running and you're not in charge of that. That is the key point to mention here, right? You need to understand that principle. I see this so many times with bugs that people have. You can't just go storing data in the cache directory and expecting it to be there. It can just be gone at any time, right? However, the whole point of doing this is so that it can be deleted by the operator. So I'll give an example here. If you're browsing your app and you're downloading images, right? Those should be put in this cache folder, because then when the operating system needs some space, it will delete those temporary images that were being downloaded by your app. So that's a very key point there. That is slightly different from the temporary folder, because the temporary folder is normally public. It's not nothing that is necessarily, it might be private to the user, but it's not private to your application. So this is private. This application cache directory, similar to a temp directory, but is private and internal to your application. All right. Anyway, so documents and support are the two that we might be looking at here. So let's go see what it was. Get application documents directory, where you may place data that is user generated that cannot otherwise be recreated by your application. That last bit is talking about that cache, right? This is about the fact that anything in your cache folder can be recreated. Stuff you put in here cannot be recreated on demand, right? It's stuff that's been generated by the user, but is user owned. Consider using another path such as get support directory, application cache directory, or external storage if the data is not user generated.
Okay. Should we mention what was missing on that table you showed?
Sorry, let me just get to this point and we'll go back to the table. I'll bring up in a second. If this directory does not exist as cranial application support files, the files you don't want exposed to the user. User files you don't expose to the user, your app should not use this directory for application for user data files. Get files. The Flutter engine's path utils get files directory API on Android. Interesting. Yes, so there's a subtle difference here, right? We're saying that this is give an example of why this matters, the difference between these two directories. You have your app installed on a device and it's being used by multiple user accounts on that device, multiple user profiles. So let's say you've got let's say you've got work home profile and home profile on your device. Both have the app accessible to the app. Data in this directory, I'm seeing from what I'm reading here, I may be wrong about this, but practically it makes sense, would be accessible to the application running under both profiles because it's not user-generated data files, right? However, the content in the documents directory is user-generated. I think there's a subtle difference here, and that is that the user can access the data in the documents directory where they can't access the data in the support directory. I'll have to.
I can get the stuff through Finder in the documents directory on my phone, so it has a tab when the phone is displayed that has a list of all the apps that have data directories like that, and then I can move stuff in and out of those.
And there's it here, application specific cache files. It doesn't explain that very much, but yeah, let's go back to that table we were looking at. Well, on the first page.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out the web's not on there, and that might confuse people.
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
Web doesn't have
well, no, it's not, is it not supported at all by web?
I believe it's not supported at all by the web because the web can't go out and look at these directories without, it's sandboxed.
I do think that's. I would still put. I'll be honest with you. If it was me, I'd probably just put a web interface in front of this, and say it uses local storage, and it reveals back a synthetic path to local storage. But I don't. Flutter doesn't have a way of injecting mount points, like fake virtual mount points that you can do stuff, and that's probably why that's not been done, because this specifically has strings of file paths that you can manage yourself. I do think that's kind of like one of the things that we do miss on Flutter, and that is things like let's say you want to make a file in a directory. You end up getting a directory object. You get directory object, but there's no create file with file name. It returns a file object and does the join of the path for you, which I think is just nuts. Like, that is fundamentally a basic principle. I would assume that files are in directories, but that's not how you would literally have to create a new file widget with the directory path string and concatenate it yourself. So I think there's definitely Dart.io changes that should take place to kind of make it a bit more natural to use those things. But equally, if these could then return a directory object rather than a string, and in doing so, you could then have a web directory, a virtual directory, which behaves differently. So when you do create file, it returns a web file object that is links to local storage, for example, and you can make those kind of abstractions. Anyway,
so my day job is starting to intrude, so I need to run.
Yeah, I was going to say that's also me. But one other thing real quick, I was talking about, as I said, talking about people not being very good at naming things, but getting a whole lot of money. Yeah, me too. Me too.
What was that?
What's the job for naming things? That gets paid a lot of money and you don't have to name things that people understand.
Oh, man. All right. I'm a bounce at the risk of dating myself saying that. But you all have a good time. I'm going to go take care of a puppy, and I'll see you next week.
And bye, Danielle.
Bye.
Both.
Bye, Danielle.
Bye. And now there were two. I'm still here because I can't get far on foot.
Then there was two.
All right. Yeah.
So we've got path providers. Yes, this is what we can. And we've got part two. This is. So I think we've answered that in thoroughly with those two things, Elijah. I think
probably to a much greater detail than anybody cares, actually. But it is important to get the right directories, and it's also important to understand. And I've seen this kind of question again, taking my experience and answering questions all the time on Discord and stuff. People don't seem to understand that mobile applications are very sandboxed. You can't just put a path in there somewhere. You can't just write anywhere it wants to on your disk. Yes, there's a little Linux operating system inside Android, but it doesn't let you have access to arbitrarily everything. It's
interesting that Android, first of all, Android is the one that started that sort of principle, right?
Yeah. And everybody's doing it. Yeah.
iOS and Android have two different principles they started with. iOS was you don't have access to any files whatsoever, and you literally have no ways of sharing data. There was craziness in terms of trying to share data, and then they've improved on the sharing between apps over the years. Android, on the other hand, has had maybe a more open approach to it, but equally, it's more about sharing content across between applications, and there's various ways of doing that. But the sandboxed environments that exist on Android and iOS have been super strong compared to desktop environments. Desktop environments are, here's your entire hard drive. You can write to any sector on your hard drive whatsoever and screw up everything. Now, that has been refined over the years. Like direct access to the drive is different API to writing a file, where you can write files. And now Windows applications and Mac applications are now in their own sandboxed environments, and they cannot just go writing to files anywhere on the hard drive. They can write to files in their specific data directories, like the ones that we said here by path provider. If you try to write to any other directory, it'll just deny you straight away. And this is the same for now. SE Linux also brought that along, and that's also progressed into the Linux world and a bunch of other platforms. So, just to be specific, you can't just like make a path in the file system and expect to be able to write to it. It's not going to happen. Also, don't expect. So you need another thing I'd see people doing, which is quite frustrating. The directories that you get back from these things should treat them as opaque. You don't care. You can't go looking at it going, oh, if I take the last component off there and then replace it with this, I can do this kind of the complex. No, it is just, this is a location. That's all you need to know. Where the details of how that location is stored in the hard drive, where it's stored, what directories that immaterial, because that will change based on the OS version, the platform you're on, and everything else, right? So that's not your concern.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up my privacy security on my Mac OS, and it's got things like files and folders just in general, which pretty much every app has access to, and then full disk access, which only things like backup does.
Yeah.
And a few other things like desktop, I know they ask me for all the time. Downloads, I know they ask me for all the time. But now you have to go through this process where the user has to be asked, can I let this app, or should I let this app access my desktop? And I like that it's doing that, but that's a migration actually from the way iOS and Android are doing it already. So Mac OS is getting more and more.
Yeah, there's also that. There's also another interesting point that comes up just on that regard is the permission models that you now get, where permissions are asked for on demand for a small period of time only. And if you grant a permission for a long period of time, at any point it can be revoked by the operating system. So now on Android, I think since 13, I forget, maybe it was 12, the operating system, if you don't use an app for a long time, will automatically revoke the permissions from the application. And next time you use the app has to request the permission. It would get denied and it has to request it again. And it'll pop up with asking you for that permission again. This stops runaway applications or things change. Like an application gets an update that now does something with that permission that wasn't initially what you gave the permission for in the first place. So there's benefits. There's a user benefit to a lot of these things, and practically speaking, I'm glad about that. But equally, I'm kind of annoyed by it because it makes my life a lot difficult when it comes to developing applications.
It's a fine trade. Security is always traded against convenience, and that's part of the issue you fundamentally face in computer security. Is that yes, you could add, I always require a blood sample to log into this app, right? But who's gonna keep having enough blood to log in? So yeah, there's always a trade-off going both ways. We have 16 questions and 48 minutes. You want to keep?
Let's power through anyway. We'll get to some live coding.
Yeah, live coding coming up soon. Should I learn Rust for Flutter as per of market? Or is it useful in large applications? Just want to know. Should I already give a 3-year in Flutter now? So he's been in Flutter for 3 years now, planning to learn some new language, Rust or Swift?
Definitely. So when it comes to the balance of languages right now in where it's being used, Rust has just as Dart has exceeded in the mobile platform in taking over, a fair group of other use cases. Rust has now done that with the systems level languages. So this is like C and other C++ and other languages that are used in various other ways. Rust has definitely brought the security, yes. This is like I'm talking about buffer overflows and other various things. So it adds to that, but it's also it's modernized some of those initial things, but still has practically the same footprint. There's a bunch of other things like Carbon and a bunch of other ones that come along to compete in that space.
Right.
Dart does not compete in that space; it's not meant to. So yes, if I was to say modern languages, Rust and Swift are good options to choose for sure. Swift is very much a Mac, iOS, Apple driven thing. So it's in those markets, it makes sense. Rust is very much a very broad market scope. It will deliver on any platform. It will deliver from multiple things. It's a systems level language, but it's equally. You could build a desktop application. You could build a mobile application with Rust. Doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
Like, the hoops that you would run through to do certain things in that language means you'd probably be doing a lot more boilerplate than what's required to do it in another language that's designed for that platform. And I think that this is where it comes about choosing the right tool for the right job. But as you said, if you've already given 3 years to Flutter and learning that, and you're happy with that, and you want to go to your next thing, yeah, Rust and Swift are two great options to turn to, without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And not a question in order, but do we want Robert on the show? I
Yes.
can help work that.
Do you
Okay,
wanna-
go to the purple Slack, Robert. I'll
right.
talk to you in a second. Okay.
I'll ping you a link, Robert, right now. How's that?
Okay. All right. Let's start with the next question here. Oh, that's the question we just did. How about this question, which is how and where to ask help for solving errors other than GitHub and Stack Overflow? I already answered this. Sorry. I answered this in chat, and I talked about flutter.dev/community. You have that URL somewhere handy, Simon, right?
Which one? Sorry.
Dev.
Sorry, I was
flutter.dev/community. Where
yeah.
you can find out it's how you find out about the Flutter community in general, how you find out where we have our Slack, where there's a Discord. That's really those sites are what I am patrolling as my role as a Google developer expert, to be able to answer questions in all those multiple places. So always look there first, and there are plenty of great places to do that.
I will mention that the Flutter.dev community page is not our page, right? This is the community at large. There was the thing that happened at the very beginning of Flutter. We came up with term Flutter community as a brand, as a group of us that were trying to be the community, trying to manage the community, run the community, and that's where that comes from. But the community at large is way bigger than us, right? To be clear, the community is, as I said, like there's Flutter meetups all around the world. These are all the community, right? But that's not the brand that we built up, which is the Flutter community, if that makes sense. Oh, look, I think we've been joined by a Robert. Hey, Robert, welcome to the team.
Hey, can you hear me?
Been too long.
Yeah. It's been like, years, I feel like.
Exactly. It's years,
Maybe.
years.
Why don't you introduce yourself for those of us who...
introduce yourself.
Oh no,
Yes.
How do you introduce yourself?
YouTube extraordinaire.
Yeah. I was bored
Content
once in a while, and then I made a YouTube video, and I kept doing the YouTube videos for a couple of years. And I work with Flutter.
And for a couple of weeks, the weeks turned into months, the months turned into years.
And
then you realize maybe this has been happening a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really horrible with introductions.
Sorry.
Yeah, have a YouTube channel. I work at a company called Peggy. I've been working with Flutter, using Flutter since, I guess, I don't know, honestly.
Beginning.
Yeah. I remember a horrible time when Simon looked at my old, really horrible code. I learned a ton of things. Then I never went back, and I was going to be like, okay, I can't go back when I'm this horrible. And then, now I know how to code.
I may be misremembering, but you're a GDE too, right?
Yeah.
See, so now we have 2 GDEs on this show.
Oh, fancy.
Yay. Or at least today.
Why are you not coming up in my lists? I can't find your channel.
I don't know.
I think I'm spelling things wrong. Probably. Yeah, I am. There you are. I found you. I'll just share this in the channel for anyone that's Obviously, don't leave us now, but there's Robert's content, and you can go find
If we lose
coding tutorials and things. We're just going to lose half our audience to people going to learn about Dart
To
3
my
patterns.
my old videos. Good times.
yeah.
So anyway,
So
should we
keep
crack on
asking
with some questions and we'll get your feedback on some of these as well? Why not?
Yeah,
What's
really.
next?
You can answer. I can just talk.
God,
What database are you using for cloud and offline sync instead of Firebase Firestore? I answered this already in the chat by talking about PowerSync. PowerSync source. It uses locally SQLite, so you're doing SQL transactions locally, but it keeps logs of those so that when you're online, it synchronizes a Postgres database in the cloud. Preferred way right now is Supabase using their technologies. But that's certainly an option. There are others in this space too. Robert, are you familiar with any other?
Oh damn! I'm using shared preferences in most scenarios. Honestly, I never have gotten the time to actually write out a whole app with offline sync.
Okay.
I think anything that's offline, I'd definitely be when it comes from an app side. ISA would be my choice in terms of package. However, that doesn't cover the cloud part of your question, Marco. The fact of the matter is, there is Supabase. There are other ones. None of the other solutions that I've seen so far. I say so far because I haven't seen everything. Has really covered the same ground as Firebase, right? Firebase is the reason why people go to Firebase and Firestore is for that thing of, oh, here's some data. I can access this data in a sort of an object model or your document object model, and then
having to learn
happens to be cached on my local device, right? And I get magical offline behavior. So, but the thing is, the problem with that is nothing you can break into. It's nothing you can add to. It's very strict API. It has to be. I'm not criticizing Flutter or Google or Firebase here around this, because they have to surface millions of customers, billions of requests a second, multi-billion, hundreds of billions of requests, stupid numbers, right? And in doing so, just adding a minor changes to those APIs can have large swinging consequences on a platform that big, huge consequences. So just changing the way you cache something, or adding one function like count how many items in a collection, just completely change the behavior of the entire platform. So because of that sort of the size of their platform, they can't make changes quickly. It takes a long time to study, make changes. Even changes to their UI is going to take time. Sadly, that's the nature of the beast, right? Like if you had a project that big, you'd have the same sort of problems, right? And not only that, to manage a project, so just to take a step back, to manage a project that big, you need a lot of staff, and suddenly you need a lot more overhead in terms of communication, training, and all this other stuff that comes along with that, right? So it doesn't move quick, right? It used to move quick. When Firebase first came out, there's a bunch of us that were using the real-time database stuff. When it first came out, it was like, oh my God, the new hotness, and it was changing really rapidly. It's the same with Flutter. The change to Flutter in alpha was just bam, 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 bam. Oh, you want to make some changes? Sure, commit them. Damn, just done, right? And then the more the user base gets bigger, the more you have to worry about making a change, because it now affects a wider audience of people, right? Anyway, taking a step back, I completely off on a topic there. Yeah, so when it comes to cloud, I end up always sort of rolling in my own thing. I'll be honest with you, and that is just making a API request and then returning some data, and then you store that in your database. I think half the fun of building apps is tweaking that, making that kind of, and the back end, the business logic of your application, making that work that's appropriate for the application you're building. The principles of most apps are, I do agree with you, Marco. Marco's probably nodding his head here in the background, but that kind of the point of having a local cache of offline data that your application can access when the user is not online, but then having it sync when it's online. Pretty much every application requires that. If it's not an online first application, which it's basically just a website that is It views some data that is online, and then it goes to the server to fetch that data as and when required, and does zero offline caching. That's like an online first behavior app, which basically ends up being more like a website, right? You can't access it when you're offline. Most
in the past, so I just pasted a link, so I want to talk about the link. In the last month or two, I came across the notion of CRDTs, which is a synchronization structuring protocol, and there's a package in the pub about CRDT, and it has a bunch of packages for how to do stuff with More and with arbitrary SQL on a server, things like that. So you can actually use this to build offline first solutions from scratch. And I haven't done much more with it than just read the readmes. So, but it looks exciting. It looks like there could be something here that that could really be useful in the long run for this kind of behaviors.
So this is the CRD conflict-free replication of data types. This is a standard practice thing. It's a bit like what's it called? Acid test for a database. It's a principle of transferring that. But as you can see here, there's several packages that have been made to do this with Hive, SQL, SQLite, Postgres. So turnkey solutions that kind of like help you sort of embed in that kind of syncing approach.
Think of like what has to be behind the scenes, say at Google Docs, where I can change text and you can change text, and they both are seeing each other in real time. That's the kind of thing that this is the protocol that is behind something like that.
I'd like to see an implementation. Maybe someone should build a ISAR CRTT.
Yeah,
implementation that would work with ISAR. That would be really nice.
Yep.
I wonder if I should reach out to the author, see if he's interested. There's nothing in pub that I can see. Just quick search. Anyway, all right.
Cool. Next, let's see here. We got can Flutter replace Android, or is it just remaining as arrangemental things? I presume. Yeah. The first part of that question is no. Flutter sits on top of Android for Android style phones, right? So you can't really replace it.
So the people, this always comes up. It's like it doesn't. Android is an operating system. Android is a lot more. People think of developers, especially app developers, think of Android as their thing that runs their app. That's this much of the entire operating system. It has to manage the internet connection, the cell tower connection, the radio, the GPS. Like there's all the hardware and all the stuff that your phone is made out of, all has to be run and operated by the operating system, which is Android, right? It has to also have a whole thing in place to work with hardware vendors, with the manufacturers, with the device and sensor people. Like this is like Flutter is not going to ever replace any of that, right? So what Flutter does is lets you replace the front end, how your app is displayed. It's a UI toolkit, and that's the thing to think about, right? From an app development perspective, it may largely displace a lot of Android development, right? In terms of people who preferably use Flutter to build Android apps because it means they get their app on other platforms, right? And we've seen that quite a lot already in terms of the other cross-platform solutions. I think the difference with Flutter, we talked about this many years, but the difference with Flutter being that because it compiles to native machine code, it takes advantage of the native GPU and a bunch of other things. That's nothing that can actually be and it's lightweight because of the way it works like that, and it's limited scope. It means you don't get the bulk and the overhead of what a browser gives you, which is a completely different environment. Browsers are not just a rendering and code pipeline in terms of displaying it, which they do, but a browser itself is a completely isolated environment. But so is an Android app, so is an iOS app. So to add another layer of isolation, another layer of abstractions and processing on top is not really required. The only reason people ever put that in cross-platform is so they can go to those other platforms without the need of rewriting, and the Dart language brings that, right? So
the problem with an abstraction that's typically being used there is that there's what we commonly term an impedance mismatch.
Mhm.
between the kinds of structures and data that you have in a typical modern application versus the kinds of ways you can represent that with view boxes and mouse clicks and things. There's that mismatch means that there has to be bridges to do that, and every bridge like that costs time and energy and performance.
It's interesting, like anything you do at a higher level has a higher impact, has a higher impact on performance than anything you do at a lower level. So this is what I'm talking about, like levels of abstraction. So eventually, you're just. I know I'm going to build rant here, but you have to think about this. Everything you see on your computer screen, all those pixel colors that you see changing, they're all calculated, and they're all calculated they're just red, green, blue values that are calculated by a little calculating chip called your CPU, right? It literally just adds 2 green colors to it and goes, oh, it's a brighter green. I'm going to put that value in a place in memory, and your graphics card goes, okay, I'm going to display a green color because that value is brighter. I'm going to display a brighter one because the value's changed. That is literally fundamentally the basis of everything, right? However, you going ahead and making software to change every single pixel color, like the original Atari and all the original sort of game platform, is just nuts now, because it would just take forever to build that entire. This is where it goes, okay, I give a good example. This is like game development, right? You have game engines now because it's super complicated, as we've been showing on the show, to go build a physics engine, to go build this, to go do that, and then take advantage of the things that are already built. But that's now a level of abstraction that you're building on top of. And each time you add a layer of abstraction away from the very base concept of just adding numbers together, which is what your CPU does, it's just a big calculator, right? Takes you further and further away. But this means that everything you do on top takes more and more operations, more and more of those calculations to perform the end result. And this means that, so it's to take a step back to the original question, putting stuff on top, and what Randall was saying there, it can take away from what was underneath. And that's what I was saying about cross-platform. The browser has an impedance mismatch to what Flutter does in terms of it renders directly with what the operating system gives it, which makes it the same level of impedance as a normal Android application, as a normal iOS application. So you don't get, you're working at the same level and not more levels above. So it works faster, more optimal. You can take advantage of the platform at that layer and things that are available to you.
Honestly, I would just answer no. That's a really nice answer.
Yeah.
We're
like really hardcore at this.
We're waxing philosophical.
All right, come on. I'll shut up. Go.
Way into the woods about philosophy and structure and studying.
Well, people find. I want to know, the audience, do you find that kind of stuff, me talking about that kind of stuff, interesting? Is it practical? Is it informative? I don't know.
It's kind of a nice way to understand, because Simon, you and I have been down this path long enough that we've acquired knowledge about the meta structures of what we're doing, and we can explain those meta structures. It helps people to move along their path. Speaking of that,
I think it's really.
Next question.
As a starter, what should I do to improve my coding? Give me your experience tips. Come watch the show every week.
Watch the show every week and just keep thinking about things.
I think that in general, right? So there's a question, Mammon, around. Are you talking about general? Are you talking about Flutter starters, or how do you improve your coding in Flutter and Dart? Or are you talking about in general? Because improving about Flutter and Dart is reading more about Flutter and Dart and how to build things in Flutter and Dart, right? That's a framework, right? But generally, improving coding is not specific to a framework or to the language. It's more about the techniques of using object orientation and communication and the patterns therein and everything else. And that's a completely different sort of side quest, if you will, along the realm of learning more about coding and development and everything.
I mean, the learning process is still the same for both. It's just a matter of what you're learning and what you're not learning. I mean, it's like, I personally have a really hard time giving an actual tip regarding this, because the one thing that I did when I didn't understand was just keep coding, and then when I find an answer, you just you just check, okay, this is the answer, can I do it differently? Is there multiple solutions to this? And then you just keep going, and then more issues you see, the more experience you get.
There's no, here's the thing, we can give you tips and advice on where to direct your efforts, but there's no shortcut to it's like going, how do I become a master craftsman, in like a master carpenter? Practice working with wood, carving wood, working with the material that your job is around. And that's the same with coding, right? Like the more that you code, the more that you learn about different frameworks and technology, the more you learn about the whole thing around software, the more you're going to be better at that job, right?
But also, the more you learn, the more you realize there's even more to learn.
There is, and there's that whole thing. It's kind of interesting. There's a whole. I think there's some interesting curves that I think developers go through in terms of. We talked about this before about being intermediate, advanced, and sort of going through different things, right? Overcomplicate things to then bring it back and simplify them the way you approach it, right? However, there is that one around, I think, acceptance, in that you to accept that you do not know everything, right? And that you may never know everything about this topic, right? Because it's so vast. Because again, I'm going to go back to that levels of abstraction. Like the basic principles stay the same, and you can apply it, but those principles of the way computers work get applied to everything now in modern life. Absolutely everything somewhere has computers, binary memory in it somewhere, and because of that, it becomes, because of those levels of what's been built on top to make those things work. You need to learn. Like it's a bit like. Here you go. Like you've got digital camera technology. That's all computers. That's all based on the same principles. All the software that does everything on top is all stuff you could program if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You want to go into that? You could go into that. How color correction works, how you program that, how you get that the most optimal thing possible to run on the chip that's running on that device. You can go be a software engineer, better software engineer, and go do that.
Okay, but let's
But there's a whole new thing you need to learn around that, right? There's a whole new principles and techniques and algorithms and responsibilities, and
let's give a better answer in this scenario. So he's actually asking for an experience tip.
I've gone off on one.
Let's just give him one tip each. Like give an experience tip, like just one simple tip that he can actually apply.
One simple tip to improve your coding. I think we've spoken about this before, but I'd say the thing that I'd say about improving coding, and I can only do this because of the way that I think I approached it, and that is go pick something to build and build it. I know it sounds weird, but let's say go, I want my own music player. How do I make my own shop? Not Shopify. Spotify. Sorry, how do I do like my managed playlists? How do I do all this? I don't know. I'm going to go learn about playlists and how music works and how audio works and build that thing. And you're going to sort of improve your coding skills because you're directing your efforts. And that's the thing. And I think that's what I would say go do. And that is go pick some topics. And to be clear, you don't have to finish what you're building. Never think you have to finish, and it's the journey that you're learning. You're learning from the journey. You're not learning from the end. The end result is not to build a business and sell a product. Because I can tell you now, a lot of people go, I want to build an app that does this, but then what they don't want to do is run a business that does that, right? Every app that you deploy that goes out the door is a company, is a business. It has to have management, it has to have things that happen with it, right? So just to be clear, building it for the sake of building it is what I'm saying, right? To learn.
I'll add a different axis for a tip that I think can be good and nicely orthogonal to what you just said. And that is be willing to have your code reviewed by experts. Get a thick skin. Show your code to everyone.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting point you mentioned there, because I will mention that is something that I've seen along the years, and that is when at the beginning, when you start learning programming, you spend a long time writing code, saving some of the basics of code, and you take ownership over that code. That is your code. You don't want to change it. You spend a long time building it. You don't want to do anything with it. That is the wrong attitude to have. And there's a lot of unbuilding that attitude as you grow as a programmer, in terms of going, okay, delete it. Be happy that you just delete it, rewrite it. Be happy that you just refactor it. Be happy that you completely just start over again. Because at the end of the day is you learn stuff from that original journey that you now apply to a completely new way of doing it that is actually fundamentally better and solves a wider ranging set of problems that you now have, knowing the things you now know. So there's always a journey, and part of the journey is being willing to change. And change what you built, and be willing to just throw it away. I will post this link. This is the Flutter roadmap. So I'm going to bring this up on the stream here. Hang on. There we go. Roadmap.sh/Flutter. It's a great learning journey, and this takes you from the very beginning and gives you links to resources and gives you a journey that you can follow that makes sense. So you're going from one thing to the next thing. You're going to learn about Git and version control, and before design principles and package management, because package management links back to Git. So it gives you a journey that you can follow. So go through that, and if there's things off of that you don't know about, learn about them, and then you can tick them off, and you can build that journey yourself. So that's maybe a good also starting point to learning more.
Go ahead, Robert. Sorry,
I will give a micro tip because I'm not sure how in general new coders in general code or approach coding, but I think to me the most valuable part is to add upon what Simon said. It's pretty much what Simon said, but as a small part of that is don't use AI to generate the code, and don't copy paste the solutions. Even if it's a super simple solution and it's one line code, just have it on another monitor, have it side by side, and actually type it out. It's like a very valuable thing of like actually typing out the solution.
You just something that came up the other day. You just triggered something in my memory that came up the other day in the conversation. If you're going to use a library, understand how the library works.
Yeah.
That is fundamentally a very important thing, because if you don't understand the code in your project, then you can't understand how your app is working or your project is working, right? So fundamentally, you go learn about an API and how it works, but you should really be learning about how that library works under the hood. Right? How that same as if you want to use Flutter effectively, you should be learning how Flutter works under the hood. And that consists across every platform. There's certain levels you can't go down all the way, right? But the more that you go down and look under the hood of everything as you go, the more you can understand the connection between the different layers and how things work behind the scenes. That's another important thing.
Wonderful.
Next question.
Yes, we have 9 questions and 10 minutes. So here we go. This next one is 2-parters. Here we go. I've got a Flutter app that provides SPA website editing capability. The editor writes to Firestore, and the SPA website displays based on the same Firestore project. Preview button lets me audition the web page. How can I render and update the page in the background? So there's little or no wait time on a web background. What? How are they going to do that?
But it's
with little or no wait time while previewing the web page. Svelte, not Flutter. Wait a second. Is this a Svelte question?
But it shouldn't matter. If it's using Firebase, you should be able to use the listenable approach. You shouldn't have to refresh anything manually.
So go back.
Probably.
Sorry. So let me just be clarified. You've got a Flutter app that provides a single page application website editing capability. Okay, so it allows you to edit the content of a single page website. Okay, the editor writes down on that Flutter app writes to a Firestore database. Yeah, and then it displays it. Okay, yeah. So I think the problem here is that your output, the SPA website itself, should be when it's deployed in debug mode, should be listening to Firestore, as Robert said, and therefore, as soon as the content changes in Firestore, the website can re-render itself. What's the preview button? Let's go. Well, the next bit here was a preview button lets me audition the web page. How can I render and update the page in the background so there's little to no way? Okay. I think I I don't know what. Forget Svelte, not Flutter. I think maybe he's asking, should I use Svelte, not Flutter for this? So first of all, you can use a local WebSocket. So this is if let's say you're on a desktop and they're using a, or maybe it doesn't matter. It could be in your mobile phone.
More continued. Oh my God! Let's throw another thing
Flutter,
in there.
Yeah, Flutter View to render. They're perfect. Well, you can just use JavaScript if you're doing it in app. So here's the thing. Okay, let's go back to the. So let me explain to people what I think the question is around.
I'm so confused.
Well, let me explain. So imagine this: you're building an editor for some content, a CMS, content management system. And when you edit that content, you need to be able to preview it before you publish it, before you deploy it to like a server, right? So his technique is you edit it inside the Flutter app. Let's say you change some text fields, you update some images, whatever, and then you hit preview button. And what he wants to do is when you hit the preview button, then to see it. So what he's doing is he's got a web view, Flutter web view, which renders the HTML, and so you can preview it inside. But he wanted to not have the preview button, so it updates automatically, right?
Okay.
Do you see what I mean? So there's not a manual thing. You can just, as you're making changes, you can see them in the website. Yeah. So Billy, it's Billy. Yeah. So the answer to this is you've got options. If the thing you're trying to preview is outside of your application, then you need to be able to communicate with something external to your application. The way that works is there's a few different ways, but this is called IPC, inter-process communication. But generally speaking, to do what you want, you would use a WebSocket. That is, you create a WebSocket, and in your Flutter app, it can launch a browser that links back to localhost and some random port, and your Flutter app hosts a web page that can then be viewed in their standard browser, let's say on a desktop. And then whenever there's a change, you send a message over the WebSocket to the browser, and the browser can then go and reload the page. It just does like window.navigator.reload, I think it is. It just refreshes it. It's the same as pressing the refresh button in your browser, basically. Yeah. You can also have it, if you want to go the next level on that interface, is that whenever they type in like let's say they type in a change a paragraph, right? It actually sends across that WebSocket. This is the paragraph ID, and this is the new text for that paragraph, and it just updates the DOM tree inside the JavaScript does inside the page. So literally, as they type it in the Flutter app, it changes inside the browser, right? Without having to refresh or reload the entire browser, right? These are fabulous things that you can do, right? Okay, so that's one way of doing it. However, if you want to just keep them inside your web app, keep them inside your Flutter application, which can actually be a lot easier because you don't have to deal with that whole WebSocket stuff, right? Because you're now in the same process. You don't do with inter-process communication. What you can do, as you said, is use a web view, use Flutter web view to display a web view in a tab or side by side with the content, whatever you want to do. And in that case, you use the JavaScript. There's a JavaScript channels, which is part of the web view interface, and that allows you to define functions that the JavaScript inside the web page can call back to, and vice versa. You can actually call into the JavaScript using a JavaScript evaluation URL, so you can actually like run JavaScript at any point in a web view. That's standard JavaScript communication. You can go look that up, and that's the way you would do it. So you just same thing you would do with the WebSocket is you can literally just do when they change content and they hit save, it does web view JavaScript. Was it JavaScript colon? It's the URL JavaScript colon window.navigate.reload, and it'll just refresh the page, right? Or you can just tell it to run JavaScript that changes the DOM tree. You can even have it so you can just send the HTML, the new HTML that you render, to the web view, and then just dump that into the DOM tree. You can just do it. You can just evaluate the HTML string, and it will just pass it and render the new page with the new content. And that's the kind of thing you want to do. Sorry, that was a long explanation.
That was a great long explanation. It was.
It took many minutes that we don't have.
Many minutes. I am deleting
three questions out of our list. So
it did take 3 slots out of our list. It was still a single question the way I was counting it before. So how do you schedule a background task on Flutter desktop, similar to Work Manager?
With great difficulty, David. with great difficulty. So
Is that your whole answer?
here's my whole answer at the moment. I don't know of any particular pub package, but I haven't gone looking for a pub package, to be honest, that does this. So if you can't find something on pub, go look around and find packages. Sadly, what you're actually looking for is nothing particular to Flutter. If you're doing Google searches for the word Flutter, then you're doing it wrong. What you need to be looking for is, how do I run stuff in the background on Windows and with the Windows API or whatever, and see what comes up. And then you can use the Win32 package, for example, on Windows to access those APIs or to do those things. Sadly, you're going into the realm of interacting with a native platform. This would be the same if it was iOS or Android and Work Manager package didn't exist for you, right? You would have to go make a platform channel. You'd have to go communicate with the platform APIs and do what you need to do with a plugin. You can do some nice things now. So Flutter and Dart give you FFI, the FFI system, foreign function interface. This allows you to communicate directly with the APIs of the host operating system. So you can go, for example, the Win32 package in pub. Let me see if I can bring this up for people. So I'm using this as an example, just because it's here. Let me just hide that question. So yeah, here the Win32 package, Win32 pub, and what this actually offers you is an entirely all the various different sort of API units that are inside inside Windows. You can then use them, like activate keyboard layout, adjust Windows rectangle, set window foreground, add menu, create icon, like you name a Windows API, and you know, this is all the visual ones. User data is the visual ones. GDI is the Canvas API or Windows Graphic Device Interface here. And here it is. Here's all the various methods like fill path. You've maybe seen similar things in Flutter. In fact, Flutter will probably use similar APIs under the hood on Windows, right? Like draw line 2, X, Y, so on and so forth, right? You can use all these APIs, and so you can make these exactly the same functions that would be called by a C++ application that was built for Windows. But you can use Dart now to call them, right? Using the FFI system. And essentially, that's the same thing for any of the platforms that you're running on. If it isn't already an API to do so, you need to change it. So anyway, coming back to the original question here was how do you? Oh, I've lost.
Oh, sorry, I deleted it because I thought you weren't going back to it.
I'm turning off the screen. Sorry.
It's how to run stuff in the background on desktop.
Anyway, there's running stuff in the background. So the point here is the existence, the idea of running something in the background is very much a mobile thing, because you have only one foreground application the user has access to. Anything when your application is not in the foreground is considered background. That is a principle. But on a desktop, on a multi-window user interface like a desktop, your app is running. It's always running. It's there, right? It does. There's no like optimization that happens like on a mobile phone where it wants to put your app to sleep and not run code, right? So you have to request for things in the background. You open your app, it's running, right? That's it. Now, what you can do with operating systems is ask the operating system to schedule something normally and say, okay, in 30 minutes, call me back, start my application up so I can do something, right? So if my app isn't already running, it continues to run. There's a whole, I'll go reference this right now in case I can't remember the original questioner's name, but you can go look up mutexes. Mutexes, mutual exclusion objects. This is around multiple processes and multiple threads. They exist in all the operating systems, and the general gist is you can do it. Most operating systems have an API for creating a named mutex. And what this means is you create one for your application when your application starts, and then you free it when the application closes. But this means that and this is how it works, and if you've ever wondered how this works, I want to tell you, now you'll know what it's called. And this is if you've got an application running, and then you try to start the application again. I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but this is important, especially when you run scheduling stuff in the background. If let's say you say, call me back in 10 minutes, start my application in 10 minutes, right? Is maybe something that there's an operating system API for, right? if your app is already being run by the user, you don't want to start 2 copies of your app, right? And in fact, when it gets called from the background, you may not want to visually show anything to the user because it's running in the background, right? So this is where you start with command line arguments. You start out with an argument, say you're running in the background, so the app knows that it's been scheduled from the background. And second of all, it will try to create a named mutex. And in creating a named mutex, if it fails, it knows the app is already running. And you can actually go get the handle of the process that's already running based on the mutex. And then you can then communicate with it. So if your stuff starts up in the background, your app is running in the background, a second copy of itself, not visible to the user, and it can tell the current copy, oh, I've been scheduled to start. But all this whole minutia around all this, what I'm talking about, is all down to the app developer. Because again, it's that kind of thing of you can do whatever you want, and it's about how you achieve those things. There's lots of guides and stuff on doing this stuff with like C++ and C. And what you need to do is transpose that into behavior, i.e. in something like using FFI like Win32 or the macOS stuff. There's a what's it called? SwiftGen. Is it SwiftGen? You got Java. What's it called? FFI Gen. FFI Gen supports Objective-C. I think it's Objective-C, Swift, and Java now. So you can also use all that stuff with FFI, and it just generates the Dart code for you. But the point here is you have to do that yourself, or you can build a plugin that uses the original C++, C, whatever language you want, code, Python, Rust, whatever, to do that job for you, right? But it still has to be done. There's no. At the end of the day, there's no magical button that says make this run in the background. That doesn't exist on desktop because your app is always running. A thing that apps do on. Sorry, I know I'm going to bake on this, but a thing that you've probably seen happen is that when you press the X button on your application, it still stays running on Windows or on Mac, and it sits as an icon in the taskbar, like at the top of the screen on Mac or the bottom corner on Windows. And that's called the system. On Windows, it's called the system tray. I think Mac has another name for it at the top bit. Apple bar. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway,
the thing on the side, the dock.
Yeah.
The dock.
The dock. Yeah. Well, no, the dock is the application thing. The
menu
Apple
bar.
Menu bar.
Menu bar. That's the menu bar.
Isn't it status bar? I don't know.
It might be called. Yeah. The thing that actually contains the icons itself is a good name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point here is there's pub packages. There's pub packages for that. So what happens normally, David, is that you set your app to start up with the operating system, and it starts up in a minimized mode, in like this mode of being in the tray, so it's always there with a menu. And if the user wants to open your app up from an icon, it knows it's already running and then tells it to show the main window, or the user taps on the icon to show the main window, and therefore your app is always running in the background, and it can do whatever it needs to do. And I think these again, this are the differences between a desktop mode application and a mobile application. There's different ways of building those apps, different paradigms, different impedances. Right. All right, I'll shut up now. Sorry.
Let's go. Let's move. I want to run a Flash extension based file in my Flutter app. What's the best solution for this?
You don't.
Go back to the 90s. Return
what
to
you
the
need to
90s,
do,
please.
So first of all, you need to you need to understand what the SWF is. So the SWF is, for those that don't know, is Shockwave Flash file format, and it's basically Flash animations that are normally used in the web for a long time. These might be games, these might be all sorts, and that's the problem. If you have user interaction, the recommendation is a completely different thing to if you're trying to display a vector graphic that's in SWF, because what you could do if it's just a graphic that you're trying to display or an animation where that has no interaction, is that you can export your SWF into another vector format like SVG that you can then display within your Flutter application using the existing packages. But pretty much, you're pretty much dead in terms of trying to. The Shockwave Flash point died, and I say that there's probably enthusiasts out there. I know there's open source packages, but you probably could find an open source Shockwave Flash renderer and compile the C code and get that working with FFI if you really want to. But I can tell you now, there's not like a magical run SWF in Flutter, right? So if you want a simple solution, there's not a simple solution, right? But there's no reason why you couldn't run one of the many SWF display packages out there and display the image or the resulting video output in Flutter.
I think this was somebody I interviewed for my old Floss Weekly show. So this would be at least 5 or 6 years ago, where they had taken the sort of structures that Flash had done and built a whole new open source structure that was mimicking what Flash originally did, and was promoting that as an open source project. But I can't remember the exact name right now. So, but that clearly was not Flutter yet. So
I'm trying to remember. Like there is. I'm not sure even if Adobe Flash. I know they had specification files for their format, so you could. I mean, if you really want to go there, you could always build a parser for the original SWF file and render it yourself with Canvas, because that's essentially what anything would do, and write in Dart.
yeah,
I'm sure a lot of people would love that, but I think again, you're going down a path of most resistance there, right? Like you're going to get. It would work, but when there's better ways to achieve your end goal, what are you trying to do there, right? So what is your end? This is the thing. Hey, right up. Yeah. You get these questions, right, where they go, "How do I do this specific thing?" But not saying why are they choosing to do it that way in the first place.
Right. Back up a step, please.
Back up a step in terms of what are you trying to achieve by running an SWF on your Flutter app? Because the answer to that is probably simpler than trying to do this.
Yes. Often it is. Let's keep moving forward.
I'm leaving in like 30 minutes. So let's speed the question.
Yeah, we're going as fast as we can. Give me some clear-cut explanation about dependency injection with some example. Oh, that's another 2 hours right there.
You take a class and you put another class in it.
Yeah, you hand an instance of the class to the constructor. That is dependency injection.
And then you can go fancy with it, but that's like the basics.
And I'm out.
How you find those dependencies is then like get it is a good example. It becomes a framework for finding those dependencies and giving them to your class. But in essence, dependency injection is just giving, rather than having the class construct and instantiate other classes and instances, it gets handed those instances in its constructor and using composition. And this way you don't go down the road of for testability, this dependency injection.
Yeah, there was because
you can mock everything that gets.
There was a good example that I read a couple of years ago, which was like a quote saying, "New is glue." Now, I mean, Dart doesn't have new keyword anymore, but as soon as you instantiate a class, that's kind of glued to that class. Yeah. So that's a scenario of like dependency injection, so you can mock it out. Or
that's actually a good point. Yeah. So like,
but we don't have new, so it's not fancy.
Yeah. There's two. I mean, it's one of the reasons why Java was the famous factories that Java has was around that same point about the idea about removing that need for the dependency itself directly on the dependent and having a function or class that returns instances of those dependencies, and that way you end up with an interface between those 2 points so that you can replace the instances at any point, and gives you a way of overriding the need for calling out to the constructors directly. But yeah, it's the same thing, Mamoon. It's like the idea is that you're just passing the things that the other classes that your class depends on to your class in its constructor.
And it's also useful to remember that RiverPod, for example, serves a couple of different levels for that, because part of dependency injection is locating the thing that's providing some part of your answer, and that's done by the fact that RiverPod providers have an entry in the namespace somewhere in the symbol table somewhere, so that therefore you can always find that. But also that you can, after the fact, do provider overrides while you're testing to be able to inject an entirely different backend class that is transparent to your provider. You can't tell from the provider that you're actually getting something else when you ask for this, and that's also useful too. So so RiverPod actually has dependency injection sort of on 2 different levels.
All right, next.
Yes. A question that has the word Simon in it. Must be just for you. Not a question. Oh, well, it's not a question for you. But I remember Simon talking about a splash screen in Flutter and handling the black screen. And someone remember which talk it was.
Because I know which talk it was. It was my FlutterCon talk. which is up on the DroidCon webpage, and I'll put a link in the chat. If people haven't seen it, I'll link to it. How's that?
Cool. And is this a Flutter question or is this a Droid question?
See if I
was that
can
DroidCon? But
see if my Google. Yep, here's my Google. Here's my video. Here you go. Everyone can have it. There you go. There's my Flutter console. Go watch it.
Here we go. That was fast.
No, I talk about splash screens and that, and it was more around the fact that you want to try and transition to Flutter as soon as possible, and then you can take over the pixels about what's being rendered and doing that transition as smoothly as possible.
Cool. All right. Moving on. A lot of trouble to send an image in FCM and show in the iOS notifications tray.
Recheck the docs.
Yeah.
So you probably, because if you look at the docs, so when you send a FCM message, the notification block actually has a block inside it for Android and one specific for iOS and one specific for the different platforms it supports, web and some other ones. So read the docs. You can do that. But equally, it's down to the operating system if it wants to show an image or not. So when a notification comes in, let's say on Android, and you have an image attached, it may just show the icon if the user is currently engaged in, let's say, watching a video, right? It will say, I'm not going to pop down with this notification and disrupt the user, right? And it's up to the operating system to decide on when and how to show information to the user, especially push notifications. So that also might be your problem, that it's been sent, but you need to like drag it down or do some other extra action to be able to see it. And that might just because what you're doing at the time when you send the notification.
And I believe, at least on iOS, that there are some configurable things I can do on my notifications settings that I can say only show it this way or show it this way and that way or something. I know there's a whole lot of things I can do that way too. So.
I'm going to quickly just dig this out here, just because if I can find it. I can find the API here. So it brings up. Oh no, do it that way. So we got here V1 HTTP protocol. It's the new one. Link me to it. There you go. There you go. So this is what I was talking about. So when you hit send, most people just stick in data, and then either a token, or you can send a list of tokens. I can't remember what the parameters, but as you can see here, you have notification, Android, APNs, FCN options, and each one of these, for example, APNs, is APNs? Yeah, APNs. They are payload headers, and these are extra options and things that you can send that are particular for when dealing with the Android push, Apple push notification service. Analytics, there, image that's going to be displayed. If present, it will override the base notification image. There you go. So you can display a particular image just for the Apple notification separate to the base one. But that's telling me right there that apparently the notification object has an image field. It contains a URL of an image that's going to be downloaded on the device and displayed in the notification. JPEG, PNG, bitmap have full support across platforms. Anime, GIF, and video only work on iOS. WebP and high. This is HEIF are X265 JPEGs. So this is like the advanced JPEG formats. Anyway, have very little support because these are newer. Yeah, and there's a 1 megabyte image size limit. Quotas used impact on hosting costs if you use Firebase storage. Yeah. Basically, the URL that you supply here has to be a publicly accessible URL because you're not receiving that URL to then display it. Another thing you can do, so this is because it's going to download it automatically for you. Let me be clear about this. This is the Firebase client library receives the data in the push notification. It then extracts the image. It then downloads the image. And this is all done inside your app. So if your app has completely been like swiped away by the user, it won't download it. It won't display the image. And that might be what you're experiencing. So if the user forcefully quits your application, and a push notification comes in, the operating system will not give it to the application to then do further actions on it. It will just show the title and message, the base title and body here of the notification. So that's nothing to do with FCM. This is just like how the operating system to handle it, right? The other thing you can do is send a data only notification. So if we go back, oops, too far. When you build a notification, you can just send data and not send the notification section. This will wake up your application, and then your application will get delivered this blob of data, this object of as a map in on background message or on message. I can't remember what it is in the FCM package. And then you can then go, oh, here's an image error, or here's the ID of the thing from my database. Go fetch that from your database, go download it, whatever, download the image, and then use local notifications package to display that notification to the user. I would honestly just use the image field, and if it displays it, it displays it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's down to the operating system, and it's out of your hands. And deal with it like that.
Righty. I have nothing to add to that. Robert, you have anything to add to that?
No.
Okay. Last question, final question. If we hadn't gotten to your question yet, we're not going to get to it today. Come back in 166 hours. Final question. I am trying to make a canvas navigable. At this point, the gesture detector on a custom paint, and I control it with a set state for XY inside a pan update. Is it a good idea?
I have to ask you why.
Ooh, that's
so let me be clear. Let me clear the Mr. P. The whole point of rendering to a canvas is just to do that render to a canvas, right? I mean, what you're doing now is building a custom element with a custom. You got on power. You do scrolling, some custom like we've been doing with the game. We make a custom scrolling thing where essentially we're painting the pixels ourselves, deciding what to paint. But if you're trying to build an app at some point, I'm like, well, surely these should be widgets, and then those widgets should be inside a what's it called? Two-dimension scrollable, whatever it's called now.
Mm-hmm.
What they call that? Oh god, that's going to bug me. Yeah, two-dimensional scroll view or two-dimensional viewport and all the two-dimension stuff, right? Because you're going to take advantage of the fact that the platform deals with all the inputs. You're going to get the correct thing being displayed. You're going to at the end of the day, you can build your entire app out of a custom canvas. Yeah. With set state, with rendering stuff and updating and repainting the canvas, because that's exactly what Flutter does eventually, right? All those widgets eventually come down to being drawn to a canvas, right? Being drawn to an output. Anyway, you're asking, at this point, yeah. I put a gesture detector on a custom paint and control it using set state for XY. Is it good idea? Not knowing what you're doing, I can't tell you if what you're doing is a good idea. It works. If it works, it's a good idea. What you're doing is you're bringing it up. The point here is you're rebuilding your tree and you're doing builds to repaint, right? Potentially, right? So you want to make sure that your custom paint, the delegate on your custom paint is actually using the repaint parameter and listening to something. So it repaints internally without having to cause a rebuild. And then also, I mean, that's all I'd say about optimizing that. At the end of the day is you probably want to go look at the FlutterCon videos on the similar link I posted earlier, and what's his name? Oh God, sorry, Roman. Is it? No, not Roman. The French guy.
Remy?
No.
Which French guy? There's more than one.
Yeah, it's gonna anyway.
Entire country full of French guys.
I'm gonna go find the link because it's trying to take 2 seconds. But there's actually a great video on building. He does a great talk about building custom render objects.
I think I know the one you're talking about, but I'm trying to remember the name of the guy too.
Romani Rastel. Yeah, here he is. Yeah,
okay.
That's it. So there's a link in the chat. I would say go build yourself a custom render object, because the point that you're doing here, when you're doing input and you're doing painting and everything else, you're doing a custom widget, right? In some
You
fashion.
reinvented widgets. You
And
basically reinvented.
yeah, exactly. You're reinventing widgets at a high level.
The hard way.
The hard way.
The hard way. Yes.
Well,
You're doing multiplication by repeated addition. Yes, it's logically the same. It's much harder, though.
to be honest, if it works and it's simple what you're doing and it's not causing any performance problems, it's fine.
Yeah.
But if you feel like it's really complicated, then you probably want to simplify it by bringing it down a level. Or just changing the way you approach it. But again, not knowing what you're trying to do with your canvas makes it hard.
There's enough technology there that if I had a chunk of screen that I wanted to have to be able to read sensor input and had to be able to read Fresh itself and might have sub parts, I would just write a custom widget and have a custom render. That would be easier than having a whole canvas somewhere. But
conversely, if what you say is a custom navigatable, if you're just rendering buttons in a custom paint and doing all that, you're rebuilding the UI system in paint. And at some point we go, well, I'll just use the widget system, right? Like there's no need to do.
You're essentially doing what Flash did to JavaScript.
Yeah.
Their own entire UI that didn't work the same way as anything else on the web.
What was that custom UI that Adobe came out with? What was it called? They had that weird. Oh, it's gonna bug me. They built an entire UI framework in Flash, and then they wanted every application ever made to be done in it. And it was platform. What was that whole thing called? Oh, I'm gonna have to look it up.
Yeah. Oh, Mr. P responds here. I believe that I'm complicated me. Okay, yeah, you complicated your project, yes. There was sort of like a Flash layer, or was it a Java layer? Somebody did a whole redo.
No, it was all rendered in Flash, and it's
Flash. Okay. I know they did it for Java for a while. The Java UI was absolutely nothing like the web UI.
Adobe Air.
Air, Adobe Air.
Sorry, Adobe Air.
British accent with that word there. Okay.
Adobe it was Air. Cross-platform runtime system. Oh god, that was just a nightmare.
Oh, Air should have been spelled ERR. Adobe's mistake.
Yeah, you could always tell one of the Air applications.
Fan mail. Yeah, I'm gonna get fan mail.
I think they still. I think they're still using it to build their own application. I think all the Adobe applications are actually built with that.
Yeah, maybe.
Which kind of makes sense.
That was the last question. So, Robert, do you want to stick around while we're doing live coding, or should we say goodbye to you at this point?
Did you want to do some live coding?
I have 15 minutes. I can show the to-do app, or not to-do app, the counter app in NeoVim. It's really fun. Wait one second. Okay.
Cool. And I think then maybe we'll do. I think some people are interested about how you embed custom web widgets. I think it was a thing came up last week and I didn't answer it, so maybe I'll show that off. People are interested. Do you want me to show your screen?
Yeah, I've done it now. Okay, sweet. I'm going to zoom in because nobody can probably read my code. I mean, this isn't any specific code or anything in general, but people seem to have the wrong idea of using Vim in general. So I just wanted to show kind of like...
This is NeoVim.
It's NeoVim.
It's not just Vim.
Yeah, okay.
It's like saying VI is the same as Vim, and it's not.
Yeah, true. Okay. I wonder if there's is there something that I want to show? I don't know.
Do you want to? Can you see what we're sharing? Because you might need to bring the bottom of your NeoVim session up just so that our heads aren't covering it.
Maybe I can do.
Let's
do it like this. Maybe.
Yeah, go for it.
Maybe.
I've seen some people doing development where they have
line
tmux and various other command lines.
I have tmux here.
Just doing the entire development pipeline in terminal, and even
Yeah,
like,
I do that.
It's
I have
great.
Git here.
And then just like, I don't know.
Hot reload.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got hot reload as
So,
well.
so for those that don't know, you've always been able to just do Flutter run and
Yeah.
run a Flutter application, and then on the command line you can just press R for reload or cat. Well, it's right there. Look, so it tells you right there.
Reload.
Let's go scroll up.
We can
You
do
scroll
help.
up? Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. So you've got like hot reload, hot restart, open the dev tools, take a screenshot, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't even know about this one. Like, you can honestly do so many things around here. Like
all those
Toggle the
things are
widget.
also accessible using the buttons in the IDE.
Yeah, but
If
you
you
can't
look
use
at,
that. That's not fun.
Yeah, just press P. Press P. There you go. That's the debug. That toggles the debug sized paint flag, global flag, so that you get the.
But I mean, yeah, we like we have all of the fun things in general. Like, you can do everything that you kind of wanted. I mean, the main annoyances with using like this kind of workflow is for people, so you don't dive in like I did and never go back, is that debugger is annoying to set up. I don't use a debugger. I haven't used a debugger for years, and if I want to use a debugger, I do it through I do it through here as well, because you can open the debugger as well.
You can open up the dev tools, right?
Yeah, exactly, and you have the debugger in there, so you can do the same thing. But I almost never use the debugger.
So is this?
But I think that's maybe this is what you should. Yeah.
Is this NeoVim with a plugin, or is this NeoVim out of the box?
No, this is my personal configuration of NeoVim. So when you set up NeoVim, you don't have any highlighting, you don't have anything fun. So this is just all custom configuration. I mean, I have a video up on setting that up, but that's outdated now because I do it in a different way. But that's the fun part of it. I liked to do all the custom things because
I do admit, like I customize my IDE, and you customize it to what feels best for your code, for your coding. And there's reasons why I configure certain hotkeys the same way, because it's faster for me to do those things, those actions. They're common actions, right? And I think same things for like highlighting and various other color schemes. Like choose what's comfortable and what works for you. There's a whole thing. There's a whole thing. I'm sure. I'm kind of curious. Right? Like many years probably of using. How long have you been using Vim for? Like,
I don't know. Probably 3 years.
Right.
I think.
And over that time period, you've been building on your configuration and customizing it. And whenever you do like a new install,
honestly, if I know in what, or if I knew prior what state NeoVim would have been today, I would probably have waited 3 years before I began using NeoVim, because there were no documentation of like setting up the current configuration for getting everything working.
It's interesting you say that.
That seems to make sense, right? You have to do quite a bit of like, there's quite a lot of learning. First, you learn how you go through and use Vim, or like the motion approach of like coding.
Yeah.
And then you learn to always using like the terminal all the time for like everything. And then you learn how to customize it or configure everything. So like configuring LSPs or like the languages, configuring hotkeys, configuring if you want, I don't know, different color schemes, configuring, like there's so many layers and everything is just kind of shoved at the same time, which makes new Vim and like Vim in general like very hard for people to kind of grasp, because there's so many layers that you have to learn at the same time.
Yeah.
But now there's so many, like it's really easy to set up a configuration now, and people have made so many videos. Like it's just a matter of like honestly the hardest part of everything right now, in my opinion, is probably learning that
learn how
you're
to quit.
using.
Learn how to quit.
Yeah. You're
That's
learning
the
how
first thing you need to learn.
but then in general, like learning motions, which is one of my favorite parts. But I mean, if you don't want to use NeoVim, you can use motions in VS Code and in IntelliJ, I believe, as well, by using like Vim extensions.
So what's that?
Motions? What is
So,
mo-
for example, like let's imagine that I want to.
Do you mean like highlighting blocks and moving blocks around and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, kind of. So like
Yeah.
in a scenario of like changing the text in here, in a normal editor, I would probably highlight everything in here, remove it, and then like write whatever I want. But
Okay.
in NeoVim, I can what's it called? Like chain a bunch of key presses, which is called motions. So for example, if I want to change everything inside these quotation marks, I can do C, I, and then the quotation mark, and then I can start typing in here.
Right.
That's
Classic.
like
Classic.
an emotion. Yeah. And if I want to I don't
Yeah.
know, delete
Are
the
you
the
using,
tail. Yeah.
are you using the LSP? So do you have refactorings and lints available?
Yeah,
to
yeah,
you?
yeah.
That's
I'm
what
using
you're
the
running an analysis server to do that.
yeah.
Oh, look at that! Look at
So I
that!
have everything, and then the
Wrap
best
with
part.
container. Oh
Yeah,
my
the best
God.
part is like, for example, I don't know. We have this text. I want to wrap it in a padding. That's kind of like how I would wrap it in a padding. I mean, yeah, we have const here, which is like fix all because we hate
That's
const.
so cool.
Right?
The LSP sort of fits in there. That's
Yeah,
LSP
for sure.
amazing technology.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. Yeah. Cool.
I mean,
But it's-
half me, you know, I've been here and done all this before,
Yeah.
and
right.
like half me is like, yes, it's great, and you can customize it how you want, but also half me is like, I don't want to spend my time customizing and doing all that, right? Like nice thing about like the sort of graphical user interface nature of a lot of this is that you can still do all these hotkeys, right?
Yeah.
You can still customize, you can still do macros, you can do all these actions, and you can still do all the same stuff. It's just
yeah, for sure.
done a different way, right?
I think that like that's why I wanted to like one of my tips in general to coding has always been like you have to have it fun. Like it should be fun. Like for example, you gave the example of like coding projects. You have to make a project. You don't have to complete it. You can do whatever. One part of like why I started using NeoVim was because I like thought it was interesting. At that time, I was working at Volvo's, and I was working at like native Android. Which was horrible because they didn't have or what can you say, like they don't have a LSP that you can use to attach and write, like because it's the horrible ecosystem that it is. But yeah, let's but in the case of like other languages, so Dart has an LSP which you can use to attach, and then you have everything just kind of done.
How many lines long is your Vim RC?
I did many lines.
used to be challenges amongst us Emacs people how long the Emacs.el file was, because it grows. It never shrinks. It only grows as you go. Oh, I can set that to happen when this is happening, and and then you go, hey, that's cool. How did you get that to happen? And we're always sharing Emacs.el snippets with each other.
I guess I guess that's the same with now. Like, you know, you have like your user config in VS Code. You have your config in IDE.
I mean, honestly, I feel like people are customizing VS Code more than I touch my configuration.
I customize the hell out of my IDE. I do.
Right.
I've got like custom icons and behavior that do all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I think that's half the nature of just development, right? Like finding the right environment and then also automate it. I mean, I think that's the advantage that developers have over amongst a lot of other users, and that is we have the power to automate anything we want, right? We have that we can program it to program, right? In essence, right? It's not taken as far as the AI stuff, but the point here of customize the IDE to macro and script and do the behaviors that we need to do our day-to-day job. If there's a bunch of, for example, if you had a project that had a bunch of behaviors that you need to do all the time, you could go ahead and build yourself some oh god, brain, where they go? The app like Atomutable or whatever, god, brain. Custom what are they called? Annotations.
Annotations. Okay,
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah, class annotations, and then you could then build your own custom code, code builders for generating code, or the new, all the new stuff as well, and extend your application. A lot of times when an application becomes a large project, you get a lot of tools and many things around the application to make the application, like build the code for the application, and to manage the code of the application as you do the application itself. You can get into quite a realm. Same for a lot of technology, and that you end up with like a lot of, I kind of got from there, but a lot of minutia around not necessarily the end product, but building the end product. So like, it's always been the case of, I think there's always been that thing around programming, which is learning the build environment, right? So you've got building your source code, which is like here, right? This code in front of us, which is in the source language. But then how do you take this source language and make the output application? That's the build environment. And that is different on every deployable platform you've ever seen. And there's several different, like, what would you call them? I said build environment, but build environments is the wrong.
Wow, you are getting all the normal auto completions and stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we have everything. Like, I mean, now I'm super zoomed, so this is like horrible to actually try to
sure.
do anything in.
Right. Wow. That's just
but
cool.
You pretty much get everything. The only annoying part, honestly, is the way Flutter Run works. For example, when you are like running in the term, like, okay, I closed the simulator down, but either way, when you run Flutter Run, you would do R or Shift R to like reload or hot reload, but there's no automatic listening of folders or files changes.
You can do that. You could actually implement that with NeoVim. And if you want to, I can show you how to do that at some point.
Yeah, please. I have my own plugin for actually. The only way I could see doing it is like, okay, but yeah.
I want to know, have you done it with like have you done like just interprocessor communication, sending to standard in of the Flutter Run? Because I'm just curious.
I wonder if I have.
That's a stupid way of doing it, but it works. It's not.
No, I'm just listening to the PID of the.
Yeah, so you can listen to the PID, and then you can access proc PID standard in, and just transmit an R. Yeah. You can literally do echo R. You can do it right if you was running right now. You could literally just do echo R to the process ID standard.
Yeah, the only annoying part that I found was that I didn't want to have to manually run with a PID.
There's room there for a NeoVim plugin, which would actually give you some visual representation of the app running. See the log, open up the log panel, do that.
There is a plugin to do all of that. I just don't like it.
But then why don't you change it to do what you want then? But anyway, I'm going to say that in that case, because you can, so the hot reload capability and monitoring the file system is stuff you can actually do. And you can actually also send it over the, using the, what's it called? They've changed the name of it now. They call it Observer Port, but the observatory. The Dart Observatory, they've changed the name of it. It's not called Dart Observatory anymore, even though it says that on the command line. Anyway, the Dart Observatory stuff actually has a protocol that you can also use just to connect to and transmit a hot reload as well.
Interesting.
So all the Dart tool does is do that. It literally, if you go look at, in fact, something I'd recommend every viewer to do is go to the Flutter repository, go into the packages Flutter directory for the Flutter tool, and go look at the source code of the Flutter tool. Because the Flutter command line tool is completely open source, right? The entire project is, but that especially, so anything you can do on Flutter Run, you can just write your own tool to do, right?
Yeah, the main thing that I saw,
you can also
sorry,
just to on that point, if you want to I've actually submitted patches and stuff to the Flutter tool, and you can actually just do a you can actually run the Flutter tool from the SDK directory without actually having it to compile it. So you can actually just run it like a Dart command line app. Yeah, sorry to cut you.
Oh, nice. Okay, see. Yeah, so the one solution that I used prior was that there's either a package that you, or a plugin that you can use that will pretty much do what you said and like split up a console with all the logs and everything like that. My main approach was that I still wanted to have like the actual terminal command running, or Flutter command, or like Flutter run, and have all of that like separated out of NeoVim, because I didn't want to just bloat up my experience in general when I can just show the terminal.
I mean, I think
the main
the thing here is that the problem with that, I mean, the good thing and the bad thing with that approach is that that's fine for you, but then again, that then becomes one of, you now have to integrate with third-party packets, services like Tmux and everything else to be able to do that kind of easy.
For sure.
Have the behavior outside of NeoVim now, but go on. So
that's kind of like the thing that I find kind of annoying, because in other experiences, so for example, if I set up a web project, they have like automatic file watching for commands, or like
you can do that
when you actually run.
Anyway, you can actually do that. Even with the Flutter run running, you could actually have a separate process that monitors the file system. When it changes it does the whole
it's just a pet peeve. I want that by default. I want a Flutter watch like command, but I believe that was in and they removed it a couple of years.
There's a thing that is going to be that what was it change? There's been some changes around that because of some of the stuff around generating code, and it was generating code and code generation, and what's the new macro thing called? Macros? No.
Macros. Well, it handles macros. You mean meta
program. Metaprogramming. The new metaprogramming, that all that revolves, it will change that behavior, right? So metaprogramming is going to be listening to your code anyway, watching the code, and when it changes, it actually runs off tasks that rebuild certain parts of your code and actually run it. So that will take over the place of take a good portion of that hot reload and enhance it more.
Oh, I also saw the question of like my weird line numbers.
Relative line numbers. You can tell that with IDE.
It's really nice when you actually need it. With NeoVim, because we have motions, we can jump up specific lines. So for example, if I want to jump up on what's relative line number 12 at the top, I can just write 12 and then K, which jumps me up 12 times, or 12J, and I can write like jump down. It's just a kind of like reference for me to be able to see like, okay, I want to jump up to main, which means I can just jump up to main. Or if I want to jump down to
that makes so much more sense. I wish VI, which is how I learned all that. I wish VI had all that. It's so much.
VI does have.
You can probably
line number mode.
Not relative line numbers. It has only absolute line numbers off and on. That was it.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't use that one.
Maybe
many years in VI until I discovered Emacs, then many years in Emacs until somebody said you got to use VS Code to get this to work, and I went, okay, I'll use VS Code, and now I'm happy with VS Code so far.
So Vim has a plugin for it, but it does do it.
Right. That's not VI. VI is not Vim.
I know that. Yeah. Well, yeah. But yeah, no, because I've used it in the past. It just changed.
Yeah. I like how autocomplete. Do you know if Codium works with that? Because Codium
this is using Copilot. I haven't used.
Something since we're on that, talking about that, something that came up earlier in conversation. We said about, as a new developer, not using these code generation tools. You need to treat very particularly. You need to understand what it's putting in there. You don't just believe it outright. It is authoritatively wrong. And what I mean by that is it can blatantly just tell you the wrong code, right? And without understanding the code, you have no notion as to where your bug will be. So be very clear about, like, it's great to use Copilot or any of these other things to like input code in there, but you have to be able to understand the code it's inserting. It's very important.
It can be a very good pathological liar.
Look, I can generate so much code in.
Wow.
Nice. Now we have a very nice text field.
Yep.
Okay.
Nice.
I can do the same thing in my ID.
No, but it's just an example of just Copilot or whatever.
I think that there is a notion of there's also a notion of people. I think a lot of developers use their mouse too much.
Yeah.
And I think that, and like coming from coming from a background of doing development on a command line, and same probably for Randall, in that you learn we had our I feel like I'm always saying that, but I had IDEs. I'd be programming C code in black and white.
Yeah,
it would just be text. There was no IntelliSense. There was no guidance. There was no instant documentation. There was no all this whole sort of enhanced IDE experience of we're just glad when we got syntax highlighting. You're like, oh my god, syntax highlighting made my life so much easier.
I've used terminals where a glass terminal, but the bottom line was the only place the cursor could go.
Yeah.
So all you could see is history, essentially, but text editors would scroll you up and down in the file, but you only saw the bottom. You could only edit.
Was it Edline line editor?
Yeah, the ADM3A was an example of the terminal that I used, and
I remember on old 286s and all the very early versions of, I think MS-DOS 3 or something, of using. There was no edit. There was no text editing IDE. You'd edit files line by line.
Yeah.
So you do Edline, and then you go up and down line by line, and just display the line that you were trying to currently edit, basically. And that's how you would
interact. In Ed was classic. There was only like 20 commands in it, and they're all single letters, and that's where we get G/RE/P for grep. It's from Ed. Yes. Wait, let me get my walker again. I think it's time to pull out my walker.
But honestly, I almost never, or probably never, recommend people to use NeoVim. It's a fun thing to do. But honestly, if you don't find it fun, then you should probably not do it. You can get 99% of the benefits of using NeoVim by just using Vmotions, an extension or whatever, if you want to use that.
I think there's a good thing that you've learned from that is using the keyboard more.
Yeah, for sure.
I think learning to some of the things of control left, right, skipping words, like using control shift to highlight the word to your left, or expanding your having the hotkey to expand your selection or select similar things, having multiple cursors, take advantage of the IDEs to macrotize or to do things that make it take less time, like taking data outside and bringing it in multiple lines and bringing it all at once and doing that kind of stuff, that making best use of hotkeys and things makes the most sense.
I'm actually annoyed.
Highlighting the slowest thing possible to do, which I see a lot of developers do, is highlighting with the mouse. It does kind of infuriate me slightly.
I'm actually annoyed that there are many things that I do on a regular basis in VS Code that demand mousing, and I don't know if there might be a keystroke shortcut, but it certainly isn't obvious even when I stare at the key maps.
I used the VS Code for a really long time, even though when I started using NeoVim, because I couldn't make the transition full on because it was really tough in the beginning. And the biggest pain point I had, especially with VS Code, I don't think it was a problem in IntelliJ, was the lack of key binding in the file explorer, or the lack of key binding for
you have
managing anything other than just what's inside the text window.
And a lot of right clicks in a lot of places. It's like, why does everything have to be meta? Can't I just click on that file name and do something with it? Anyway.
Anyway,
all
right. Dude,
The longest 15 minutes you've ever done.
Yeah, yeah.
Rob.
I need to go now.
Stay for 15 minutes with us. I really
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank you
that.
for dropping by. Nice to see
Yeah.
you.
Anytime.
Have a good
anytime.
one.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're
Bye-bye.
gonna
Right.
we're gonna do a bit of live
Alright.
coding. See you
Yeah,
soon,
let's do
Rich.
some Let's do some live code.
Yeah.
Is there anybody left? Are we still doing? Yeah, well, there's a bunch of people left. Okay, hi people. I mean, a bunch of people are left, not a bunch of people left.
That would be awesome. Yeah. So there was oh my god, I forgot his name. I'm not fully functional. I need to go get some dinner. The new Flutter product manager. What's his name? He's gonna he runs the engine. He was running the engine team. Todd Volklop. Todd showed off a command line Flutter renderer and FlutterCon, which was just brilliant. And it was just funny because, why not render your Flutter app with ASCII? Right? Nice. That's literally did. A pixel was represented by, I think that's what he did. I can't remember. There's a couple of those things that have been around. Like there's actually, I think there's still, when I tell you that, Randall, you might recognize, I think there's still a telnet / teletype based server you can connect to, and you can watch Star Wars.
Yes.
Remember, right? That's still a thing.
I think it's still around.
It's still around, probably somewhere. Yeah. And things like that, where it's like, why not just render everything in ASCII?
Right.
I mean, there is like it's funny because I remember back in the days of when what you had was a command line only interface. I would be rendering windows with ASCII symbols, and like having UI that was revolved around that. I built a whole windowing system using ASCII. It would save the buffer behind a window so it could flip them in and out and change the depth order and stuff. It was.
Here's the URL. I got it.
You found it. Check in the chat for people to check out later if they want to.
I gotta find the right window again to get back to you. Where is it?
It's probably like SSH now or something, right? But
no, it looks like a telnet. No, I don't want to put it there. How about I put it over here? That's what it gave me anyway. That's what the search gave me. That looks familiar.
That sounds about right. Anyway.
Yeah. Telnet. Do I even have Telnet installed here?
We should be able to. I think SSH will run in like a Telnet mode, won't it? Because it will interpret ASCII control sequences. I forget.
Yeah, I don't have Telnet. Oh, SOCAT can do basically Telnet. Let's see how do SOCAT. SOCAT with a port number.
Right.
Oh man.
Let's do a little bit of live coding before we before we finalize the show, because we did say we'll do it and time is getting on.
Yeah.
So let me bring up some code here. We were live coding. I was thinking we could do a bit on the game, but I think we're not going to have time, and I don't want to start something that we can't finish.
That would be unusual.
Well, I don't really have the time, and I don't think we spent quite a bit of time on other things already.
I've got events to go to too that I want to prepare for. So
yeah, so I think I'm thinking right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to see if can we get away with perhaps just doing the. We talked about last time around using the web UI package to embed custom web content in a Flutter app, and we didn't really explore it before. So I was thinking that maybe that's something we could look at doing now. So let me see what we can bring up. So this apparently will run on web. We've got the web folder here. So let's do Humpday 24. 24. I thought we were palindrome then for a second. That makes any difference. Right. So let's do our sort of standard opening. Whatever. Right. So if we've got a app, say my app, all right. So we should theoretically be able to run this on, let's choose web. H. Want to do that. Right. See what happens here. And then we can look into what it takes to add in the UI web package, and I'll explain a couple. In fact, we can do a little bit of navigation as well because I think people are interested in that.
You aren't hearing the leaf blower outside my window, are you?
I can't hear anything, so sound rejection is perfect. Okay, so we have a web page. Yeah. Let's put this side by side with our content here and kind of go from there, I guess. So something that something that people were saying before. Let's do material app and should hot reload. Yep. Okay. So you could integrate Flutter in a framework like that. Yes, you can. In fact, that's exactly what was done at FlutterCon by Michael Thompson. No, not Michael Thompson. One point.
Mark Thompson.
Mark Thompson. Sorry, that's the one. Yeah, Mark Thompson. Sorry, I am definitely not 100%. Right.
I can only remember that because I used to joke around. His name could be Tom Markson if he was doing a. Yeah.
Let's just do, I don't know, content. There you go. We'll call it home. Right. Oops. Right. What do we want to show? We'll show a placeholder to begin with, make sure we're rendering stuff because we've only got white screen, and then in the middle of that placeholder, we could do what? Size box. Let's do a size box in a minute. And then we'll make that 300 by 300. And inside that, we can put ourselves do another placeholder for the minute. In fact, let's just do a color box. Colors red. Right. So this is just enough to give us a little demonstration environment. Let's see what we get. There we go. It's exactly what I wanted. Minus whatever that is. So we have a debug environment, and we have our placeholder here with a red box on top. So I think the question here is if we want to integrate this on web and we want to put some other web content in here, right? Which was the original question, is how do we sort of approach that sort of concept? So if we got a fixed box size, let's say this red box, and we replace it with an iframe, how do we do that with just plain Flutter code, right? So first of all, as we said before, the API has this Dart UI web package, which is the one we want to use. So let's go import that. Right. And now we have access to wonderful web things, including the platform view registry. So if we want to do a custom view, we could have like a stateless, what do we call this? Google view. I don't know. What can we put in an iframe? Give us a web page.
TheDailyWTF.com. No, just kidding.
Sure. Daily WTF. Let's call that's what we're at.
Okay.
Daily WTF. This is those that don't know, you're gonna have a good time finding out what that is.
Yeah. They're gonna hate me for that over the site, probably, but okay.
Sorry?
They're gonna hate me if I send a lot of people over. Oh no, they like people going.
They've got the bandwidth. They got
ads, I think, somewhere on the edges.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So we'll chuck our widget in there for a start. So this, let's say we're starting at this. We've got our widget. So there is a HTML element view. This is a base widget in Flutter, and this is how you, in a web view, put some web sort of content in there, right? In Dart Web, HTML element view, right? And it talks about it in the. You can read the documentation about it. However, it only works on Flutter Web. That's the whole point. There's an Android platform view, which is the Android. There's an iOS view as well. So in this case, it now wants a view type, and we need to register a view type. So if we make this stateful, when our widget starts up, we need to register our state, and when it, well, we can just register for a second. Try to keep this simple and brief. So that library that we imported in, the web UI one, I'm just going to alias it just so we know where the API is. So there's a platform view registry, which has our register function, and there is that lovely view type which matches what the HTML element needs down here. So in this case, we can register a view factory called whatever our custom name is. In this case, we'll call it daily WTF, right? And this is used as our link to the actual view hierarchy itself. So now what's going to happen is whenever a HTML view with this tag essentially gets added to the view hierarchy, it will call this view factory to generate the view for it. And the view factory, if I remember rightly, actually is given the view creation parameters. It's a base function in here though, and I think that's for compatibility across platform. Sorry, all the various implementations. It's going to bug me that I can't. It's not going to take me in there, is it? Yeah, view factory can be any function that takes an integer and optional params returning a HTML element DOM object. So this is view ID, and then this is the view creation params, and this is what you put down here. So if you notice, when you have these creation parameters, which is just an object, so this allows you to pass over instance-based parameters. If you had like create params, this could be here. Let's do this. Instead of doing this, we could do let's call it. Well, we'll leave it as WTF, and we'll come back and fiddle around with that in a minute. But anyway, this could be object create params, right? I suspect this is nullable, but whatever. Let's go. Right. So then we need to return a HTML element from this. So we could do, in this case, we could do an iframe with a source of, what was the URL? dailywtf.com.
If you do /articles on the end, it will be the most recent articles, so you can click on them. I was looking for one with just today's article, but there isn't one. I'm getting it via an RSS feed.
Just /articles, you think?
Yeah, just /article/ and let it render all that.
I got it. Right. So we can put that URL in there.
Yeah, I was looking for something better. I kind of wish it was like there was a link that was just the latest, but they don't do that.
I'm sure there was a pass. Oh, it's the wrong type of element. So this is because naming conventions, I would say, as HTML. Material has a class called element. So we specifically want the HTML element. So we alias it. And then the HTML function for element allows us to pass HTML. So this will create HTML from valid HTML fragments. So you can see like this is an example.
Wow.
And then that will return it. So in this case, it'll return a iframe with that source on it, right? And we can take that step further and say width 100%, height equals 100%. And the reason for that is it will then stretch its width and height over what's been given to it by this HTML element view. Anyway, so now we've done that. If I restart, let's see what happens.
It blows up.
It's failing because of our nullable. Our view factory doesn't match the pattern that it's looking for. I think it's because it's nullable. We can also it's suggesting there it wants named. It wants a named nullable params. That's what it is. Sorry if it's a bit small on the screen there, but that's basically it's saying our function doesn't match one of the two possible int to object or int params to object. So this should be the job. Let's see here. iframe, removing disallowed attribute iframe source. Now this is because
you have to do the security thing, right?
I think the whole browser security thing, and you can get around it, but hang on. The view type, height of view type data may not be set, default to 100%, height 100%. Style, width, style. Oh yeah, I mean I put width and height, but you can also do this is what it's complaining around. Well, we'll do it like this. It doesn't make a difference either way, but one is HTML4, one's HTML5, whatever.
You're only mixing 5 different technologies here at this point. It's crazy. It's good stuff.
Removing disallowed attribute. I feel like since when is style disallowed?
No, it's
and is this coming from the browser or is this coming from something else? Like what?
iframe.
I mean, if I do an iframe element,
I don't think
I think I know what this is. It's because so I think what's happening here is when you interpret a HTML fragment, it tries to remove code injection that might be taking place by a third party because you might be receiving the HTML string.
That's what I was talking about. Security. You have to have your own security filter set up for the elements being injected.
I can't be bothered with any of that. So we should be able to create a iframe and set the source ourselves, which is actually slightly better. I'm just trying to keep things straightforward, but whatever. Style. So that essentially is achieving the same goal. I think we need to access the current one that's in there actually. So that dot width rather than redefining it. Am I not seeing a problem here? What's going on? It's saying what? Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Okay. So let's try again. Yay! There you go.
Woohoo! Yes. And are the links clickable? I guess
it'll just be all in the iframe, right? So if I click on comment or refuse to connect. The one time you go is links clickable and it doesn't. It does work. It's just it failed.
Okay.
And there you go.
Wow. There we go.
Yeah. So you can that's how you can I mean it's literally that simple. You're registering a view type and then putting the parameter in there. Now obviously we put an iframe in there, but this can be any HTML element. You can, as I said, generate element from
now we're giving all these ideas of people now that can just submit their website as an application to the store by putting a single iframe in there.
It only works on web, first of all.
Okay.
So just to be clear, this isn't, this what we're doing here. You can register a view factory, but if you're on Android, you're registering an Android view factory, right? You have to return a different type of object. This is returning an element because we're on the web, right? So I just thought if we take the latest decoding Flutter URL and put that in here as, in fact, we use the embed. Where's the embed? Here it is. So this is the embed code that was I just exported from the YouTube website for the latest Flutter video. So as we can see here, here's what it wants to dump in there, and we can replicate this same behavior here, right? So what we can do is we can dump this embed URL into here as the iframe URL. We'll keep the 100% because this matches. So the reason for doing this with the style is that we can control the size, and if I remove the width and height, then if I resize the window, it will resize as well. So if we had like a 50-50 column, it would also capture the right size. So this is like saying expand, right? This is basically saying be as big as my parent will allow me to be, right? So now we want to do what was it? Dot allow full screen equals true. What was the other one? Frame border. I think it's just border. Why do I have a feeling that there's different?
Oh, here's a good question here. Let's see. What about error handling? Like when it fails to load on a bad network, how do you get that revealed to you?
What an iframe or your browser?
Yeah, probably. How do you notice it's broken inside the iframe? Is it going to throw?
Well, you do get throw. You do get events. But again, like this is just web questions, right? Just to be clear, like you could go just look at that. How do I in JavaScript? How do I do this? And you can just do it in Dart, right? Because Dart is interoperable with the web.
Right.
So anyway, let me just finish this off, and then
okay,
we'll be in the same place. So
no.
So what we got? So we got allow full screen. We've got I'll put the same order just so we can find. So we got allow full screen. Allow frame border is an old HTML 4.1 for the depth border. I don't think border 0 does the same thing for us. Title is just the help thing, so that when you hover over it, it tells you what it is. You don't obviously need to put that in there. And again, with width and height, we could choose to do a different width and height, but that's, again, we could also wrap our widget in here in a size box, right? So if I could wrap this widget with a size box, I could put the width and height in here. And you can also, if you want to, as I said, with 100%, we could also put it in here, 560 pixels and 315 pixels, right? But then, you know, you're moving the layout into the HTML rather than into and let Flutter deal with the layout. So
right.
Anyway, say 315. Let's get rid of our red. We don't need that anymore. And we could call this YouTube player, right? And we could even have it then pass in the video ID. Right, and then that video ID we just dump into the URI. So that share ID, you don't need that. That's so that they can track the share. You need the video ID, which is this. All right, so okay, so now we've got a YouTube player. We're going to fix the size, stick in the center, blah, blah, blah. And I think it matches it. So let's restart, see what happens. Oh, we should probably change our, well, there's the player. Let's change it to YouTube player.
Where else was that?
Yeah, there it is. So we're gonna enhance the parameters here. So if I hit play,
starting with version 3.
Hey, that's great.
There's our good friend Craig. So there he is playing inside the browser, which is great. If I do full screen, it will also do full screen, which is wonderful. And that is because we've done allow full screen in here. Where is it? Allow full screen. And the permission, this should be a permission, I think, for, I think it's picture in picture. I can't remember. There is actually a full screen permission. I don't think they need it. But anyway, you can also autoplay them. Can we make it scrollable? Yes. You just.
But
Well, what I had before was scrollable.
Yeah. What do you?
I don't know what you mean by that. Sorry. Maybe I'm missing something. I mean, you mean put this in a scroll? Yes, you just stick it in a list view. I mean, we do that if you want. I mean, here's the thing, right? We could take that video. Let's go grab. Let me go grab the next latest Flutter video. Okay, copy the URL. Right. I'll copy the ID. What we'll do instead is let's get rid of that placeholder because we're just doing that as a thing. We'll get rid of the debug banner to get rid of that. I'll find out the screen. And then you mean the iframe is stuck when the mouse is over it? Not what? Let's have a look. Let's just have a look at this. Right. So let's say we got YouTube player here. Let's get rid of. Let's make a. Let's wrap this in a list view builder.
Oh, I think he's meaning that the pointer events are going to be trapped by the YouTube player.
Yeah,
and
they're not strictly done that way, but I can talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
What you're looking for is
some sort of
there is a widget that you wrap your view with, and it fixes that problem.
All right.
And I will go find it for you.
Now, how much would you pay? Yes. I'll buy that for $1.
What's it? Oh, sorry, hang on. I'm trying to remember. I know exactly what your problem is, it's
looking for a pointer redirect or something.
I'll go dig for it in a minute. I think I know where it is, but anyway, let me carry on with what I was doing here, right? So we actually have some test data to work with, right? So let's have this return a padding with let's just do a padding here, engine sets. Oops. Say 16. I know it's probably too small. Center, and then inside that we'll have a YouTube player, and then that ID. I'm going to show you a bug that we've introduced and how you fix it, right? So we're going to build a const list videos, right? And we'll put the first ID in there, and then what was the other ID? This one here. And then I'll put a couple more from the YouTube channel.
Close the wrong window. I hate it when I close the wrong window.
Just give me one second to grab a couple of these. Oh, I see. I must have missed that one. UI tests. Pooja did a UI test video. That's cool. Right. So if we do have a list of videos like this, and we can now do item count, video equals videos, index, and then that would be the video ID, right?
I hate it when I accidentally close the YouTube, or not the YouTube, the YouTube live chat pop up. It's like, where's everybody again? They're here somewhere.
All right, so if we now do that, and then I'll drop in what I said earlier, we'll drop in a fixed size for this to make our lives easier. Oops. Right. So if I run this now, I wonder if this is going to expose the bug. I know that is here. Let's just see, restart. See if it breaks. It does. Okay. So if you notice here, we've managed to get the same video repeated multiple times. And this is because we've registered the same handler with the same view type. We want each one to have different parameters, and that's where params comes in. So, so to get this video ID, we don't pass it through the widget, because this will just be the widget that was constructed when we constructed this view platform. In fact, if as soon as that widget at the top disappears off the view stack, this function will break, because the widget won't be attached anymore, made whatever. Anyway, so this is where creation parameters comes in. We can supply an object in here, so we can supply across our our video ID, and then we can treat params as a video ID. We'll say right. If we wanted to pass across more than one parameter, obviously we pass across a map or any custom object, model object that we want. So now if we do this, and yeah, that should be enough, I think. There you go. Now we have a different YouTube video for each one. There you go. Yeah. Now, if you looked at that, do you see what just happened? If I hit play on this one,
Starting with version 3.
I'm going to mute him. And now if I scroll down and scroll back up, hey, what happened to my video? It's still not playing anymore.
Oh, no.
And this is expected behavior, and this is because our YouTube player, what our YouTube player wants to be is to be kept alive, right? So that's where automatic keep alive client mixin is in play for.
So it got destroyed while it wasn't in view.
Correct, yeah. We can then say, we could be very clever about this and say only keep it alive if we're playing. And we can do hook up JavaScript in the player and whatever else. For the minute, we're just going to say true, right?
Yeah.
It'll be nice and simple. We're visible, right? Yeah. Well, we'll get the scrolling in a second. Patience. Right. So again, if I hit play, I scroll down, and I'll scroll back up. He's still playing.
Wow.
Just like that. So if we were in the middle of the video, and we scroll down and we can click on this one and play this video and scroll back up, it's still playing.
Yeah, nice.
Nice and simple, right? Now, what was happening here is I'm moving my mouse to the edge here to scroll up and down with my mouse cursor, with my mouse scroll wheel. If I do it on top of the video, it doesn't scroll. And this was one of the questions here was just talking about. That's because the inputs to the native widget are capturing the mouse event, which is what you expect. You can override that behavior. And also, we're actually missing something from our override here, which we need to do super build. So we do this. This is how keep alive works. So what I normally do is, you don't normally do super build, but what I will do is you add that in there. It's complaining because it's not added in there. And then I'll just put a little comment to show that it's for this mixing specifically. And what this is about is, if you want, it ensures that your widget is kept alive when builds take place. And this sends off the right notification up the tree to the list view, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, right. So the thing I was looking around for is there is a package. I know there's a package. I've seen it before. I've used it many times. And I forget. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if it's been made part of the main Flutter repo now or what. I've done this several times. and it's gonna. Oh, it's really bugging me. No. Why is this?
I don't know. what you're looking for. I'd help.
So basically, what's happening here is the HTML view is stealing the inputs, and there's a way of stealing them back. And I forget. I don't think you can
pointer something. Isn't that pointer something?
Hang on.
Ignore pointer.
Yeah, it's not as simple as that. There's a gesture. There's a flutter.
Oh man, now you're making me think. There is definitely something.
I know there's a package. I've used it. I'm for the life of me, I can't. It's not one that's built in.
Because you're trying not to get all events, just the event for scrolling that's intended for the parent, right?
Yeah, I'm sure it was Google.dev publisher.
Wow.
I'm gonna have to just hunt through because I can't remember it. It'll click as soon as I see it. I know it will.
One would hope.
And this is where we find out it's not that publisher, and possibly a Dart. No, maybe Flutter.dev.
Might be Flutter. So you want a widget that redirects or that tells the immediate child not to take that event, but some distant child?
No, you can say.
What's the interface?
Sorry. What's this? I investigated add event listener will.
It's not just a straight.
Okay, this is interesting.
What?
That is terrible, but I think it's funny. Sorry, I found someone's. Sorry, I found someone's cheeky sort of fix for this, which is a hack. Basically, they override the prototype for the base HTML element for add event listener, and then basically say, is it a Flutter glass panel and is it a wheel? Then return so it doesn't go to the native view. I just know. This is gonna.
I'm thinking you can stack it in front, isn't it? Isn't just something that's a parent of that web view?
Not the same issue. Hang on. I know exactly what the author. I know what this person's dealing with. And I've done this. I've dealt with this before, and I remember dealing with it on web. And for the life of me, I can't remember what the package was, and what it did. I feel like it was something like it would actually do. Let me just try this for a second just to see. Because you could capture the events. Yes, it's not working here. I know there's a way.
You'll probably think of it the moment after we terminate the stream.
Okay, what I'll do, as a matter, I don't want to spend here anymore. To be honest, like we've been going quite a bit, and I want to sort of end the stream. I want to post this online, and then what I'll do. Let me remove that ignore. Sorry, I'm going to post this on the gist, and then I'll update the gist with the implementation details once I have it. How's that? So let me just move us back to here. I'll just add the obligatory license so people can use it.
Right.
MIT, whatever it is. Yeah,
license to kill. Yes.
That HTML element thing is really bugging me now because
No, yep.
what I'm going to do, so I'll post it as a gist, and then I'll update the gist with the fix. I'll go dig out some old code I've got around and update it.
Cool.
That's the best thing I can say. Right. What have we got here? This is Humpday 24/01/24.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice and balancing.
What we got? Oh,
No,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Just
Yeah.
the numbers. So 24/11/24 will be a nice symmetric number. Probably the first one this year.
So Flutter web iframe embed. And this is on the 24th. Sorry, everyone. Give me 1 second. And our YouTube video so people come back and look at it. All right. Post the gist.
Yes.
There we go. So that is in the chat. Link is on screen. Those who
Cool.
want to see it.
Those that want to type it in from the screen, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean,
yeah,
I know for reasons people might need it, but it's posted in as a thing. I think we'll wrap it up here.
It's a good spot to wrap it up.
And yeah, we'll see you same time next week, I guess.
Yeah, 164 hours. No, 165 hours.
Enough hours.
Yes.
Right. Thanks everyone for joining us, and I hope you had an interesting time. And we'll see you same time next week. Bye.
See ya.